This is the greatest moment in my life.
Hey, yo.
Hello,
Oh,
the power
creepy.
of the music of the night.
Boom. Good evening, CWF. How the hell are we?
That's amazing. Best thing is not even Halloween. This is just standard get up for me and Sarah.
Yeah, this is what we dress up on when we do our private streams.
That is definitely chain wrestling after dark.
It is indeed. It is indeed. Some people may have noticed there is a third little face with us, Magsy.
They have, yeah. This gorgeous bastard right
Look
here.
at that sexy beast. Steve-O, over the
Hello.
moon for you to be joining us on Chain Wrestling Live, my friend. How are you doing?
This is it's a very really weird, surreal moment because it's very rare that I'm ever on a guest on a podcast, especially one that I actually classify as one of my favourites.
Oh, mate, thank you.
Oh, we appreciate
Legitimately, this is just, you guys are like literally part of my life every single day. So to be on here is really, really weird, but in a good way. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to discussing tonight's match.
Yeah, no one's looking forward to discussing
that's a stretch. Now that just means everything you said was a lie because nobody is looking forward to that match. I picked it and I'm not fucking looking forward to watching that match.
Oh man, no, it's brilliant to have you along, Steve-O. The support you give the show all the time is so, we appreciate it so much. You're like absolutely fantastic, mate. We, it's a joy to have you along for our, well, what is our 99th episode now, Magsy, isn't it?
99, yeah, 100 next week.
Oh yes,
Wow.
the big one. 100 links in the chain next week. But before we get to that, if everyone can hear me okay through this stupid get-up that I'm already cooking in, I'm melting behind this already. Sweaty sigh is not a good look. But anyway, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever and whenever you may be listening or watching from. This is Chain Wrestling Live with Mags and Sai and Total Bloody Steve-O, an SJP World Media Production, episode 99. I am Sai, and with me, as always, is the Ultimate Warrior to my Ultimate Warrior. Yeah, I get a bit anxious sometimes, it happens. The One Warrior Nation to my aim of sedation, if I can get enough of these beers in me through this mask, that is, of course. A podcaster who will never let us run too long and have our main event cut off early. WCW, Halloween Havoc, you silly sausages. The podfather himself, Lord Mags, and our guest, Total Steve-O. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
I'm doing amazing. Here in my dashing Cody Rhodes get up. I thought I'd keep the dress up wrestling fiend.
Well, going on that theme, can I come as when Cody Rhodes was in 2011 wearing the see-through mask? I'll just pretend I'm wearing that.
That works.
Go.
Yeah. Let's.
That works indeed. Magsy, should we dive in the chat very quickly and see who has joined us early doors?
We shall. Straight away, Dan Griffin in the chat. It's Sunday and I never know what Monday means, so I am totally lost. Scottish Danny, hello, sir. How are you? Sharon in the chat. It's Sunday. You know that means. See, Sharon gets it right every time.
Yeah.
Dan Griffin, the Under Magster, circa 1994. Well, actually, it's meant to be the Phantom of the Opera, but I obviously can't sing. So I'm going to go with Cody Rhodes, dashing.
It works.
Cam
mate,
Griffin,
it works.
Exactly. Cam Griffin, hello, sir. Scotty Danny says, what in the actual hell? Very, very true. And we get the total Steve-O pop. We do. I mean, it's an actual honor and a privilege to have Steve. I know you said some nice things earlier, Sar, but I think this is the first time I've ever been on a podcast with Steve-O, and you are just an absolute great guy. Really, I enjoy all the content that you do. You put a smile on my face all the time. So we massively appreciate you being on the show.
You know what my stuff's about. It's just about being honest, real, and just what you always say in the shows is just enjoy doing what you're doing and just be yourself rather than being a gimmick, essentially. And if you're not a gimmick, you're going to enjoy what you do, and people will follow along with you, whatever the journey is. And yeah, appreciate the kind words. And it's just like I say, this is too professional for me. I'm too used to weird random streams of
this
the
is-
FBL stuff. It's
Also,
This
you say don't be a gimmick. Have you seen what we look like this week?
Again, this is I'll be going out on the town in this very get up. So this ain't a gimmick. This is real laugh. Joshua Goodwin is in the chat as well. Just another Sunday for Mags Inside. Good evening, everyone. Cam with the Steve O love as well. Oh my goodness, it's Steve O.
Oh my! Oh my!
Dan Griffin, chain wrestling weird in a good way. I mean, it's just catchphrase after catchphrase and t-shirt after t-shirt with this show. Sharon saying you sound fine, sir, so you don't have to worry about your audio. Mr. Benny Mac in the house as well, which I think you rechristened him this week.
Benny McCormack.
Benny McCormack, yeah, very, very true. So that's how he'll go back. That's how he'll go by all the time now. Chain wrestling, too professional, really, yeah, exactly. And then go compare, Mr. Mag. Go compare.
Thank you to everybody for joining us as always, even though we're a day early this week. Thank you to everyone for joining us here for Chain Wrestling Live, our Halloween special. Maxie, it feels like a big deal, doesn't it? I know it's only our second one, but it feels like it's almost like one of our biggest.
The second annual. It's like our Halloween Havoc.
It is. It's like our, to me, it feels like it's one of our biggest shows of the year. You know.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's all downhill for the rest of the year from this.
Yeah,
so
everyone's got to wait till next October.
This is what we build up to. All our storylines build up to this, and then we absolutely shit the bed from November onwards.
That works, mate. That works. Now, there will be a few slight changes to this week's show. Being Halloween, we have a guest and other things that we are doing as well. For example, the Hall of Lame this week. Steve-O is inducting on my behalf. I'm very much looking forward to seeing like awful crap.
Lazy bastard.
The bullshit.
That's what that is.
Bastard.
Pulled a fast one. You never put any effort in, and this week you've had to put zero effort in because you've tagged in. You've got the hot tag for your.
I'm also conscious about how long we bloody run. You know, if we've all got a Hall of Lames, we've all got other stuff. It's going to be a long old show, and I'm thinking you still need to clock in around the 2 hour, 2.5 hour mark. Don't go too long.
That's fair.
Yeah, calling me all these names, man. That's unfair. That is.
What we could do is we could do a Halloween Havoc 1998 and just go straight to the match and then cut off, and that's the end of the show.
Yeah, we run out of pay-per-view time.
Exactly.
Oh man. It's it's going to be slightly different, and we also have our competition, of course, that we will get to in a little bit. We will have, Steve-O will be part of the judging process with that too, and people get to win some SJP World Media merchandise, as well as a fantastic cup beaker made by RBF Luxuries, and some other bits and bobs donated by my wife and RBF Luxuries as well, which will be a nice little surprise for the winner when they receive whatever it is they get if you win. So there we go. So Magsy, I suppose we better get on with our show, hadn't we?
We better do. Let's introduce something to the Hall of Lame.
The Hall of
I can't breathe, man. I'm so warm. Gentlemen, what do we have?
Well, are we going by standard proceedings, and I'll go first then?
Yes, that sounds good.
Right, so I've got two ways I can approach man. Is I can describe it to you and go through the whole storyline, or I can hit you with the main reason and just let it hang there. So I'm going to go for the second one. My entrant this week into the Hall of Lame is Tony Schiavone is a paedophile demon.
What?
Right, there we go. So that's what I was hoping for, that reaction. So Halloween Havoc.
Do you want that to be a t-shirt as well now?
I think, in fact, I'm not even gonna explain why he is. I'm just stating it as a fact now that Tony Schiavone is a paedophile and a demon. So we'll leave it at that. Steve, what's your Halloween then? No, I won't. I'll go for it. So Halloween Havocs, they're known for being one of WCW's biggest shows of the year, but they also are known for having little cinematics to introduce them. And one of the more famous ones was in 1993 when they introduced Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal. And the cinematic was a group of kids going trick-or-treating. So you had a kid dressed as the Stinger. You had a kid dressed as Dracula, a girl with a bat on her head, and then a bloke who I think is gone as Frankenstein, but is essentially just sellotape some green paper to the top of his head. And they're out doing their trick-or-treating, and it's getting to the end of the night, and the majority of the kids want to go home. But the little Dracula says, I want to go to this big house here. So we see a spooky house, lots of smoke, big iron gates, and the gates open, let the kids in, and then the gates slam shut behind the kids. They end up knocking on the door, and who answers? It's Tony Schiavone in a black suit and tie with a very paedophile sort of look on his face.
Do they have a set expression?
Well, I mean, go back and watch it, because the way I'm describing it does not do this justice at all. He looks like a paedophile. It's as simple as clear as that. So he lets the kids into the house, and as he closes the door, he does that kind of a slow close, and he's looking at the camera, and then gives a wry little smile at the end, just like a paedophile would.
Okay.
He then magically teleports to the top of the stairs, and also is wearing a dressing gown. Very paedophile, if you ask me. You've invited 4 kids into your house, and you suddenly got a dressing gown on. The kids are asking for candy, and he said, I've got something even scarier for you, because tonight, Halloween, is the night when anything can happen. Evil, ghoulish things. He then teleports back down to where the kids are, and he scares the kids to death by revealing that underneath his Tony Schiavone mask, he was actually a demon all along. So my entry this week is paedophile Tony Schiavone actually is a demon.
Have you heard the story about he had his own kids there at one stage as well?
I think they were his kids.
No, they weren't. His kids were there because they were told they could be in this like vignette, this promo footage, whatever. They stayed all day, and then they wrapped up shooting, and his kids were never involved. They just basically sat in catering for the whole day, and Schiavone was really, really pissed.
So pretty much like half the WWE roster.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh no, it's good. I don't mind it, to be honest. I mean, obviously it is a bit noncy, but I don't mind.
I mean, he makes Seven look like he isn't a nonce, and Seven was actually a nonce.
Yeah, his whole character was that he preyed on the young, shall we say?
There we go. So that's my entry for this week. Tony Schiavone, the little nonce.
Okay, Tony, we're sorry. We love you, really. Steve-O, what about you, my friend?
Well, can I ask this? Was there a week that's gone by where paedophilia has not been mentioned on this show? Every week, someone is accused of being a sex offender or a nonce.
Well, we're just looking after the children of the UK, my friend.
We're providing a service.
We're
it's not
singling
only
these people out. Yeah.
a wrestling show; it's also providing a service.
We stand with all the children to fight off.
Joshua Goodwin, Tony the Diddling Demon. Perfect. Was the Diddling Demon the original idea for the Kiss Demon? I bet it was. I've got something even scarier for you than Tony whips his cock out, says Dan Griffin.
Brilliant. Steve-O, what have you got, bud? What have you got?
Well, talking of Seven, I don't think I know for a fact you've done Seven. I don't think you've done one of Goldust's other gimmicks. I can't think you have.
Okay.
And it's thanks to Mags when doing a change in attitude that I had to, like they did, go through the Monday Night Raws and all that malarkey. And it was when Goldust became the artist formerly known as Goldust.
Oh yeah, it's bad.
And I'm not going to lie. I've gone on Wikipedia to remind myself. And I'm just going to read off Wikipedia, really.
That's more research than I do every week, mate.
Which is-
Don't worry about it.
That's the standard SAR way.
Essentially, it says here, he had a feud with Vader in 1997, and the appearance of the artist formerly known as Goldust, which is a reference to Prince. I don't understand. Do any of you two know what that even refers to?
So Prince changed halfway through his career, changed his name to a symbol, and he basically called himself the artist formerly known as Prince because the symbol wasn't actually words; it was just literally some ridiculous image.
It was to do with the record company, wasn't it? Holding him over a barrel and contract. Yeah, and he was trying to sort of work his way out of a very unreasonable contract, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Quite clever, really.
Because it then continues saying he was managed by Luna Vachon, which again, even her in herself was back then just appalling. Like every time she came on screen, it's like skip. I absolutely hated it. It says here he began mimicking celebrities and fellow wrestlers with characters such as China Dust, Love Dust, Dusty Dust, Hunter Dust, Flash Dust, Marilyn Manson Dust, Sable Dust, and Vader Dust in early 1998. The worst one that I remember, there was two actually. He came in dressed as a baby in like a giant diaper.
That's amazing. That one, Baby Dust.
Yeah, and Austin stuns him. And it's a complete cock up, and he just falls into the toilet. The toilet falls over. Austin has to push it all over and everything. It's on the TikTok. It's just ridiculous. There was also another one where he came in as like a bondage wearing individual, and it was just appalling. And I just when watching this, I was just thinking this was allowed back then. This was allowed to go ahead back then. It was just abysmal. And that is my Hall of Lame side. Just atrocious.
Spot on, mate. Absolutely spot on. I say like quite often on the show that the Hall of Lame was kind of inspired by those gimmicks that are on your TV. I mean, and my mindset always goes to when I was a kid and I was watching something, and my dad would walk in from work and he would never see Shawn Michaels wrestling Razor Ramon, and it was amazing. He would never walk in when we had Ricky Steamboat versus Ric Flair, and it was incredible. He would walk in when we had Doink the Clown, or he would walk in when Goldust was there in a thong or something like that, and he would just look at me, roll his eyes, and be like, "My God, what are you watching?" And that is kind of what, and that exactly, the artist formerly known as Goldust, literally ticks all the boxes for that sort of criteria, Magsy, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember when Goldust had I think it was a green and black leotard, lime green hair, and or red hair in a lime green face. Yeah, I mean, creatively, the guy thinks out of the box, but yeah, those did not land whatsoever. Absolutely, it's a great entry. I think Goldust is pushing Brutus Beefcake hard to have his own wing. I think there's a couple more Goldust or Dustin Rhodes gimmicks that we can chuck in. Yeah, so yeah, I think he'll have his own wing of the Hall of Lame very, very soon.
Heading in that direction, mate. Heading out. Two brilliant entrants, lads. Two brilliant entrants. We have Nancy Schiavone and the artist formerly known as Goldust. Very, very worthy Hall of Lame entrance. Where do you wish to go next, Magsy? Are we doing our competition now, or are we doing? I can't remember exactly what we agreed literally 20 minutes ago because
you literally said this exactly like 19 minutes and 50 seconds ago. We're doing the competition next.
Okay, excellent stuff. So, everybody, if you have entered the Chain Wrestling Halloween special competition, this is your moment. We're going to run through your entries. Obviously, for the audio version later in the week, this will not work very well, and I apologize. But then, tune into the live and you can check it out there, can't you? But we're going to be looking at your entrance that you have DM'd to the Chain Wrestling Twitter account. And then the lads are going to decide who wins the goodies. And speaking of the goodies, I can't see anything with this mask on. One sec. Speaking of the goodies, I don't know if we can make this out because it's dark in here. Here is your Chain Wrestling mug there, your beaker. Personalized on the back with Chain Wrestling Halloween Contest Winner 2022.
Yes, that's actually awesome. I want one of them.
And the Chain Wrestling, you can't enter, Maxie. And the Chain Wrestling.
So what is bullshit?
That is donated to us by my fantastic lady, my awesome wife, Sharon, from her company RBF Luxuries. And there'll be more RBF Luxuries goodies coming as well. And also your pick of any t-shirt from the SJP World Media Network merchandise store, from any shop, any show, any t-shirt you wish. And a couple of new designs are going up this week as well, so you can have a little look at those before you decide what you would like. Maxie, should we dive on in and have a little look at what we got?
Oh, we've got some stunners. So firstly, we have Benny Mac as the Fiend, which I think is absolutely awesome.
So
really
good.
Well done. This one tickles me every single time. It's not even so much the outfit, it's the facial expression. So this is Dan Griffin as a flock of seagulls. Jesus wept.
Just so people are aware, these entries that we're talking about now, I will put them all together and release them out on the show's Twitter account for those who listen on the audio version, just so you can have a little look through when the podcast comes out later in the week.
We've got James as a box of Cocoa Pops. I mean, the effort that he's put into it, and I love the purple naff as well. Just to add to it. Josh DeBoard as Jesus.
As Jesus.
as Jesus.
Oh, it's so good, isn't it?
We have Morty as a Brad. Do you think that's his wife's wedding dress?
I think it's his. I think his wife wore the suit.
And she always still does. That's what he records the Morty and Fitch podcasting, just in that all the time. We've then got Mrs. Benny Mac as Alexa Bliss.
So good.
That's fantastic.
So good.
Alexa Bliss, that is fantastic, isn't it?
And then Danny, before I get to his entry, I don't think he got the point this year, because last year he did really well, ended up being the winner. This year he just hasn't put any effort in whatsoever. He just looks like how he would look of a normal day. Getting ready to stab. Just doing a bit of stabbing. So that's Scottish Danny. And then last we have Mandy Rose. This is from Yvonne DeBoard. So there's some really, really cool entries there. Oh, good Lord. Have you changed mask?
Yeah, I can breathe better in this one.
You're a lot better looking. You're a hell of a lot better looking with that one. So let's pick a winner, lads. Who Steve, or who gets your vote?
It's either Danny or Benny McCormack. I think it's got to go to Benny. I think that is phenomenal. I think that is stunning. And you know what? I wasn't even watching wrestling. Even to this day, I don't even watch today's current product. But the fact that I even know who that is, I think that's phenomenal. I think that's brilliant.
It's a great pick. And again, I love Danny's because it's just Danny in his natural environment. But I'm actually going to go with Mrs. Benny Mac because, well, I'm actually going to go with both of them because this is a great team effort. I love the fact that Josh and his wife Yvonne both dressed up, but this works as a tandem and it's just so well done. So I'm going for both the McCormacks.
Josh and Yvonne, that's brother and sister. They're not married.
Oh, well, you never know in Gloucester.
They're not from Gloucester. They're from the States, mate. That's our fantastic crew who put on RSH for us every week.
and I was not aware. Apologies. I wasn't accusing Americans of being, my sister is my wife kind of thing.
I love Dan Griffin's hair for the Flock of Seagulls effort. I think that is fantastic. I enjoy Yvonne Devord as Mandy Rose because I think that title belt is just completes the fit. That's the RSH championship. That's their own
phenomenal.
personal title. That's their podcast
phenomenal.
champion, yeah. But I think, Magsy, I'm going to go along with pretty much what you've said. I think Mrs. McCormack is an absolute star here.
Yeah.
As Alexa Bliss, and I think that gets my vote. So where do we stand? What are we going to decide, boys?
It's 2-1. The McCormacks win. Yeah, the McCormacks win.
There we go. Mrs. Benny McCormack, congratulations. You are this year's Halloween champion from the CWF. We'll have to make sure your chap Benny McCormack lets you know, because I don't think for a second you're watching this shite right now.
And if you won't, we apologise profusely.
But I will be in touch, whether that's via Benny or directly if you're on Twitter and so on, to discuss what you want to do with regards to claiming your prize. And to everybody else, fantastic, awesome, brilliant stuff for your entries. Did we have a look? Sorry, did we have a look at Joshua Goodwin's one? Did that come up?
Joshua, did you send me Joshua's?
The very first one I sent. It came in very, very early.
Well, I haven't got it, so
sorry, Josh. I will find it on my phone and resend it, Maxie. But yes,
apologies.
I think it goes to Mrs. McCormack.
Yep.
There we go. Awesome
Great
stuff.
Pick.
Awesome
Great
stuff.
pick.
Okie doke. So I suppose now, Maxie, after our competition has been done for another year, we will dive into our non-wrestling topic potentially.
Well, you'll have to give me a chance to just switch pages because it StreamYard doesn't let you load up more than one page at once. But yeah, anyway, there we go. Let's go for it.
Okay, great stuff. You got to play our little jingle, or are we not bothering with that anymore?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Even I'm waiting for it.
This mouse and gloves do not work well at all. One sec. There we go. Come on, play.
NWT time. Oh, no wrestling talk here. It's the non-wrestling topic.
Lovely. Nice. Lovely. Nice. Ooh, lovely. Lovely.
Okay, I have had to lose the mask momentarily to turn some light on because I cannot see jack shit. Before we do continue, I will just bring up Mr. Goodwin's fancy dress efforts because it was a bloody good shout. Let me just do this now on the old Twitter machines. Dun, 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 dun. There we go. If anyone can make that out, we have Joshua Goodwin there as Tony Khan.
Ah, very good.
Oh, that is really good. Yeah, that one. I don't think that one came through to me.
Though that's the chat between you and me, mate. So.
Oh, well, I must have missed it when I was scrolling through. Apologies. But which one's which? Which one's Tony Khan and which one's Joshua?
That's it. The only thing missing, I think, from Joshua's actual picture is a big pile of cocaine. So then, our non-wrestling topic this week, very fitting, I guess, with regards to it being Halloween and trick-or-treat time, I suppose, is practical jokes, pranks, the trick part of the trick-or-treat side of things with Halloween. And we had some quite brilliant stories come in, Magsy and Steve-O. I'm sure we're going to have a good old giggle at these. As always, Mags, I will go through them in the order they arrived into us, which I know makes you incredibly happy.
Yeah, I mean, I love scrolling, especially past people's comments, but there we go.
We start with the Canning Town stabber himself, Scottish Danny, at Scottish Juggalo on Twitter. And he says here, he once bought some police do not cross tape off Amazon, plastered his neighbour's door with it, and when he came back from work, he absolutely shot himself.
And then Millwall Chris's reply, did you stab someone in his house then? Find out tomorrow. So, yeah, well, Tell us, Daddy, did you stab your neighbour after putting up police tape on his door?
We have James at Yamoright on Twitter. And he says, you can't beat cling film under the toilet seat. Now, I've never seen that done or had that done to me or anything like that.
I have absolutely done that before. Absolutely done it.
Okay, explain the process. So you just put cling film on and then people piss on it and it goes everywhere.
Yeah. You've worked it out. You pull it tight so there's no ripples in it. Otherwise, you'll find out. But you lift the seat up, and you know the porcelain bowl. You put the cling film around that. Put the seat back down. People lift the seat to go for a piss. The piss bounces off the cling film and goes everywhere. Yeah.
See, the thing is, the person I would most likely do that to would be my son. And it would just end up with me cleaning it up anyway. So
I mean, you do it in other people's houses. You don't do it in your own house. That'd be weird.
That would make more sense, to be fair. MGB Graham at MGB Graham on Twitter, and he says when he asked everyone he knew to submit 3 questions to View from the Top Rope podcast when our good friend Matt Willis was a guest, even providing questions for some people. So it ran so long, they needed to record over 2 days. I knew with the time difference, it would be ridiculously late for Matt.
I remember being a part of that. I think there was around 150 questions got asked.
My God.
Yeah. He was. I mean, Matt absolutely loved it because he was the center of attention for 2 episodes. So
he does like a little chat as well, doesn't he, Matt? He does like to talk. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Love you, Matt. Cam at CamGriff92. He says, a few years back, when venturing back up north for a weekend, my wife and I ordered some breakfast to the house. Upon his awakening, I offered Dan Griffin, his brother, a spare sandwich they had sent. Obviously, he was in a hungover state, obviously.
Obviously. As standard.
And he snaffled the box in seconds. As quickly as I saw his eyes light up to the thought of a 3 breakfast sandwich to try and cure this hangover, it vanished. The sandwich inside the polystyrene box was actually one of my daughter's used nappies. Only a piss. I'm not an animal, he says. It's all right. It's only a bit of whiz. What's wrong with you? Cam says it was the proudest moment of his sibling life. Oh, dear.
The worrying thing is when he said the sandwich vanished, as if Dan, as if he just like swallowed it like a duck. Before realizing this tastes.
Yeah. Did you pick it up to make for toilet?
If it was a shitty nappy, I'd have puked. Pissing on the stomach. Bitter, that's drawing the line.
Yeah, that's it. He's got levels, Dan has. He's got levels. Speaking of Dan, we have one from him here at Dan Griffin 21. He says, the best prank I've been a victim of was when I was stocking low shelves after hours in the supermarket I used to work at. The fresh food manager stuck a watering can spout in my butt crack and poured ice cold water into my pants. Objectively funny. That made you jump, wouldn't it?
I mean, how did they get the spout in and he didn't realise before they poured the ice cold water in?
There's plenty of lines I could go with down this road, but I think it's best we avoid that, really. It's not in the best of taste, is it? Dan continues. The best prank I've been a part of was telling my mum, me and Cam, his brother, couldn't make her 50th birthday in Spain, but turning up to surprise her. We kept that going for 6 months. For 6 months nearly, and her reaction was a perfect combo of priceless and wholesome. That is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's less of a prank and more really, really sweet.
Mm. Yeah,
so he has got a nice side as Dan Griffin.
I mean, don't get me wrong. The 6 months of upsetting them, making her think that they weren't going to be there, is probably a bit mean.
Some bullshit.
Bit sadistic, maybe. Dan also says the worst prank he's done was he was out drunk on a work night out, and a colleague gave me carte blanche to say whatever I had to do to get her boyfriend, another colleague, to come out with them. I asked if she was sure. She said yes. So I rang him and I told him she was in a car accident. Oh my god! Ah. says it's-
Did he come out though? Did it work?
He says it's not cool,
She's
and I
dead.
regret it.
Thank fuck for that. Let's get out on the beers.
Oh, could you imagine that if he did celebrate the thought of this and came out to, like, you know, with a bottle of champagne or something? That would have backfired, wouldn't it? Dear
And
me.
she's there. She just sat there waiting. And you are a monster.
Oh, let us know in the chat, Dan, the reactions of when they turned up and so on, because that's dark. That is dark. Oh dear. Rob at UTT Rob on Twitter. He says he once, oh my goodness, he once sewed sardines into the bottom of a mate's curtains. It was a growing prank, as at first there was just a little smell that he couldn't find. But as the weather got colder, the radiators came on and the smell increased tenfold.
Oh,
That is fantastic.
that
I love
is
that.
Grim. That is grim.
I love it. That is so good. That is so good. Joshua Goodwin, our excellent co-host on the NXT Rise and Fall podcast, out tomorrow morning, looking at another episode of NXT from 2012 and onwards. Joshua says, down the pub, it was a mate's birthday. He bought 5 tequila slammers each. Ugh, tequila, not for me. Bought 5 tequila slammers each and challenged him to a race. It was only after he won that I explained my slammers were actually just water. Pretty sure that was an attempted murder looking back. They did survive, so I guess I'm off the hook.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Tequila fan, boys? Is that something you would have on a night out?
No, I am not a massive tequila fan.
No, nor me. When me and the wife went to go and see Pop Evil play, we were drinking with one of the guitarists from the band. They were the support act when the main band came on later on. We were drinking with one of the guitarists there. He had like the credit card that were given to him by the record company of X amount of expenditure, and he kept buying tequila for me and him. I felt it would be incredibly rude to say no, but I'll tell you what, that was a struggle. And I don't struggle much when it comes to having a few drinks, but that was a struggle. I didn't want to upset the guy who was in the band, so I was necking this rancid, horrible tequila with him. Not a good look at all.
It's always been one of those drinks that make me instantly gip.
Yeah,
Right.
You have to force yourself to hold it down. Yeah, no, tequila is not my favorite whatsoever.
No. We have another one from James at Yamallright, I think is how you say it on Twitter. And
You've
he
struggled
says,
with that for months now.
Every week. James, why did you change your Twitter handle? It's completely thrown me. And I'll tell you what happened. I'll get used to it and he'll change it again. Just to screw with me, you know? James says, not really a prank, but got word going that a mate and a colleague of mine's dad was ex-Aston Villa goalkeeper Mark Bosnich. Said his mum had an affair with him. Everyone believed me. Even photoshopped his head on a photo with Bosnich. Probably had to be there, but funny as fuck. So you basically said that your mate's mum whored herself out to Mark Bosnich for a one-night stand, and he was the product, is what you're saying?
Wow. I mean, of all the people in
Why Mark
the
Bosnich?
football, why Mark Bosnich? That's
out of everyone you could.
that's setting your standards pretty low, though, isn't it? You could have said anybody in the world, but you went for mediocre goalkeeper and Aston Villa legend Mark Bosnich.
United legend as well, mate. He had a couple of seasons there, didn't he?
Not so much legend, though. It was quite a flop.
He was at the club for a bit, shall we say?
They paid his wages.
He was there. Magsy, that's the lot from Twitter this week, bud. That's all we had, unless I've missed a couple.
I don't think you have. But yeah, some wacky pranks there.
Yes, it is. I enjoyed those. What about you two fellas? Any practical jokes you've had played on yourselves, or you've played on other people, or you've just seen other people play?
It's very rare that whenever you release a topic that I go, I have nothing to add. And this is unfortunately, I have lived a very sheltered life. And unfortunately, I can't think off the top of my head any pranks on me. Sorry, lads. No Steve-O topic today.
No worries. No.
Okay. Steve-O doesn't continue.
Oh, brilliant.
I've been involved in a couple of pranks in my time. I've done the cling film over the toilet one. That's hilariously funny. I've done the classic pouring salt into people's drinks or replacing water with straight vodka. Done all those kind of things. But the best couple that I can remember was when I worked in a factory. I think I mentioned that I was very adept with forklift truck driving in my time. So there was once a bloke called Alan, and a few of us cling filmed him to a pallet and put it on the top of some racking and left him there for pretty much all the shift. And then the forklifts used to get used as kind of like a taxi up and down the factory line. But if you ever were giving somebody, because people would stand on the forks and like you drop them off wherever they want to. I mean, pretty unsafe, and you would fail your forklift truck driving lesson if you ever told them that. But we'd do that. But if it was someone who you wanted to wind up, you just set the forks off going as high as possible, and then you turn the forklift off and get off and crack on with the rest of your day, and they'd be stuck like Judy Bagwell, essentially, at the top of a forklift.
Judy Bagwell.
But yeah, those are a couple of the funniest ones that I can remember being a part
of. One I've mentioned on the show before with regards to my I don't know what they're called. Is it the ped egg for taking the roughness off your feet?
Oh yeah.
This story is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
Steve-O remembers more about our own show than we do.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed this?
I mean, that's maybe because he listens to it and we don't. We've lived it, and then once we record, we wipe our memory of it as if this show never happened.
But yeah, I used the ped. You know, you take the rough skin off your feet, the dirty, crusty bits and bobs, and it gathers it all in this little plastic container for you. And I thought that looks a little bit like that desiccated coconut.
This file.
So I put it in a bowl. And I went upstairs and I pretended I was eating, and I started talking to my lad, and he's like, "What you got?" And I'd said it was desiccated coconut, and he said, "What's that?" And I explained, "Just lick your finger and have a bit, it's lush." So my lad did and said that don't taste like coconut, Dad. And I was like, "Oh, okay." He came downstairs a few minutes later because I was roaring with laughter, and he said, "What was that, Dad? What have you done?" Because fair play. I love my boy, but I play pranks on him all the time. And he came downstairs, saw the ped egg, saw what I had done before I'd even had a chance to explain, and ran to the kitchen sink and damn near threw up in our kitchen.
Yeah. Oh, that's so grim.
Oh.
Let me just have another go. I didn't really get the taste of that.
Yeah. That's it. It was a good one. It was a good one.
Evil.
There was another occasion where I used the charcoal toothpaste that's supposed to be whitening. And of course, it foams up black. And my lad had been watching a few zombie films and so on. And I walked into his room shirtless, dribbling the black, going, "Oh!" And he screamed and he screamed and tried to climb the bedroom wall. Not a good look. My dad had a good one as well. Again, I don't know if I mentioned this on the show. I may well have, but
if you
my old man, yeah, probably. My old man used to get constantly ribbed by a good friend of mine, one of my best mates growing up, saying about how old my dad was. So on the one occasion, we were at the front of the house and my dad decided he'd had enough and went to chase my friend. And he chased him around the block a few times. And when we got back to the little green that's outside the front of my parents' house, my dad clutched his chest, started wheezing and collapsed to his knees, dropped to the floor, led on his back. Of course, I'm panicking like mad because it was incredibly convincing. I'm panicking like mad. My mum comes out the house and she is stressing, thinking my dad's having a heart attack because he still smoked a great deal at this point in our lives as well. And my mate Leighton was panicking like mad, and he was basically virtually in tears, saying, "I've killed your dad. I've killed your dad." He went over to my dad, and my dad shot up like the Undertaker, grabbed him around the front, and went, "Old am I, you little fucker."
That's amazing.
Yeah, forget the fact that everyone was virtually in tears, thinking my dad was dying on the front lawn. But what a bastard! But there we go. Thank you so much to everybody in the CWF for, first of all, for your entrance into our Halloween competition. It's fantastic. I can't wait to discuss with the winner what they will select from their prizes.
Sorry to interject. Can I just tell you a really dark, and this is dark, it's not even funny, but I
Go
just
for it.
thought
We
of
live for
something.
dark.
So I thought, so unfortunately, give or take this time last year, my dad passed away. And when we went to the morgue to see the body, I was kind of like, oh God, this is going to be not particularly pleasant seeing my dad laid to rest and everything.
Yeah.
And the lady removed the coffin head thing and everything, and I looked in and I'm like, is this what happened to a dead body? Like, because the face had shriveled up and everything, and it turned out it wasn't him. They'd actually got the thing, and I genuinely thought I was part of, like, you've been framed or something. I was kind of looking around going, is someone filming this? And
oh my God.
because the weird thing is that he was wearing a Motorhead, because my dad was a massive fan of Motorhead, and he was wearing this guy that wasn't my dad was wearing a Motorhead top, and I'm thinking, hold on a minute here. We said to these guys to put on a Burnley top. I don't understand what is going on here. And yeah, unfortunately, it turned out it wasn't actually him. Like I said, not funny at the time. I can kind of see the funny side of it now. But yeah, unfortunately, yeah, it did feel like a trick had been played on me and my mum. And unfortunately not. It was just a complete cock up by the funeral parlour themselves.
The fact that he was a big Motorhead fan and this other guy was wearing a Motorhead shirt as well. That's a proper head fuck, isn't it? That's insane.
Yeah, because well, I was going to say, I even looked at him thinking, they trimmed his beard and everything. What's going on here?
Oh my God!
It just wasn't him.
Why?
And then what made it worse was the funeral director came in with a cane mask on.
Oh no!
Just having a look around.
Sorry, wrong room.
yeah.
I'm looking for a Miss Vic. Have you said?
God, that was awful as well.
Oh my goodness, terrible stuff. There we go. Thank you so much, everybody, for
we've actually got
your pranks and so on. It's been fantastic hearing them. Magsy, sorry, bud, what are you saying?
Yeah, we've got a couple of additions in the chat.
Awesome.
Dan Griffin says he got twatted around the head with a salmon whilst working at a supermarket.
What supermarket did Dan work in? Because it doesn't happen in my place.
You just made lager come out my nose.
Cam Griffin says he screwed the apprentice's tool bag to the roof of the storeroom when I was on the tools. Felt so bad that I actually gave him a ladder to retrieve it. And then Dan said, had a housemate who was a massive grot bag in uni, just the smelliest, dirtiest fucker ever. We hid his bed one day in the one place we knew he wouldn't look, the shower. Brilliant.
Oh man! Did I ever mention about when I swapped a mate's house or flat around? Like someone who, looking back, it was incredibly mean. He had showering in the chat. I remember little ginger Steve-O, whose name was actually Andy. It's a long story, but there we go. He was looking back, had incredible OCD, and everything had to be just so. His flat was immaculate, and it was when the Gloucester docks had just been converted from warehouses to flats. So these places were like they looked to the business. They were really nice. And they had this lovely flat right at the top of one of the old warehouses, so about 4 floors up, something like that. But you were allowed to smoke in them, and everything was immaculate in this flat. Everything was straight lines. Everything was set in a certain position. If you put the TV remote down in the wrong place, you could see his eyes going. He was like that kind of intense, And basically, it got to a stage where I had a few beers around there with a couple of other friends watching the boxing one night. I think it was a David Hay fight. It was quite a few years ago. And he went for a cigarette. So he had to go all the way down 4 flights of stairs, smoke a cigarette, and come all the way back up again. In that short amount of time, me and a few friends jumped up and swapped his whole flat around. So we put we put his front room in his kitchen. We moved as much of his kitchen into the front room as we could. We emptied his bathroom cabinet and put it in one of the kitchen cabinets and filled his bathroom cabinet with like the salt, the vinegar, the sauces, and all that sort of stuff. We literally just swapped everything around. And then in the kitchen where we moved the one sofa to, we sat down and carried on watching the boxing like nothing was different.
That's evil. That reminds me of a story I think I've already told on this podcast before, of when I was at school and we had a science teacher called Mr. Topping, and when he left the room, we took everything off his desk and sellotaped it to the roof in exactly the same position that it was in on his desk. He showed us how to make a gunge out of two liquids, two clear liquids, and they met this like green gunge. And so one of the classmates threw some of it just above where he sat, and all through the lesson you could see the gunge slowly stretching until it snapped and landed on him. In the same class, we locked one of the other pupils in the gas cabinets, or gas cabinets where you do experiments that are gassy, and we locked him in and hid the key, so we had to spend the rest of the lesson in there whilst the teacher did the lesson.
Is that a trick?
I mean, it was funny at the time. I think he's probably had many therapy sessions because of that. And then there was a pupil called Mark Bailey. He was literally the class clown, and he spent the full lesson hanging out of the window of this classroom, and it was on the second floor of the school. So,
Oh my goodness!
Yeah. So, Mr. Topping, I apologise for my part in it, but he was abused by the pupils at that school. Yeah, it was pretty rough.
Oh, amazing! I cut a little hole in the bottom of a teacher's beaker once. They had like a cardboard beaker of juice, and they went out the room. And when they came back, this was a science lesson. They came back and we slit a little hole in the bottom. So every time he picked it up, he could have a drink, put it down, but it would start pouring out on his desk. So, and you'd see him, he'd literally just wipe it up and put the thing back, thinking he'd spilt a bit. But every time he'd take the little juice carton up and have a swig and put it down, it was just pissing out all over his desk. And eventually, his desk, his paperwork, everything was just covered in his fucking fruit juice he had. That was a good little giggle. I enjoyed that.
Aren't we absolute just tossers?
Yeah.
Evil.
I enjoy it though.
I would guess, yes, you are. You absolutely are. You pair of bastards.
I put speaking of like forklift trucks, there was a guy I worked with who I might have mentioned on the show before, but I'm not gonna say his name. That's not right. No, fuck it, I will. His name's Dino, and I used to say to him, "Jump on the forks, Dino, and I'll lift you up to the shelf, and you can have a look on the pallet. That these parts that I need. See if there's one there." So we do that, and as you said, Maxie, you lift it up as high as you can and just fuck off, don't you? But we had these massive box. I don't know what the right term is. Like, is it halogen? Like big, big chunky lights. They get very hot, but they light the whole warehouse up, if you can imagine. Quite deep, halogens, big, and we would lift. We had like the forks with 2 extra extensions on, so they would go up incredibly high because the pallets were stacked right the way to the ceiling. And we basically, me and another guy who worked there, lifted Dino up so high to this particular light, he had to curl up in a ball on the forks because the light was like right here. We lifted him up that high, turned the fork truck off, and we fucked off on lunch. So we had a 45-minute lunch break, came back, and didn't even say nothing. Got in the fork truck, lowered him back down, took the keys out, and just walked off. But I saw him about, I don't know, maybe half an hour later. One side of his face was bright red, where he was underneath the halogen light. It had literally burned.
It's gotta be Kane.
I sellotaped his burger to one of the pylons above the building as well. Once when I went to the food van, I taped his burger to that. Just
again, I don't think these are tricks. This is just this is bullying.
Yeah,
bullying.
It is. There was an occasion where we had the spring sort of, I don't know if it was took out or it was broken, was knackered on the toaster. And I put the old toaster back because it was broken, and literally sat there for about 20 minutes watching this guy put his bread in the toaster, press the button down, go out the office to ring his missus, come back, and of course it goes straight back up again because the spring was broken. He couldn't figure out why his toast was still soft. So he pushed it down and he'd go back out and do something else, come back. 20 minutes this guy was pressing this button down, fucking off, coming back, and it was like, and he's turning to us and going, "What are you doing? Is somebody popping my toast back up? What the fuck's going on?" And we were like, "No, mate, no, don't know what you're on about. No, don't know what you're on about." Yeah. What a bastard I was in my 20s. I'm amazed I ever got married, I'm amazed anyone would want me, how horrible I was.
You.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We've got another Griffin Brothers one in the chat as well. My nan fell asleep once when a few were around, My granddad bent over, put his arse right next to her and blasted a fart to wake her up. First
my
time I'd
goodness.
ever heard man Nan swear. Then Cam brings some more info to it. Says, and then she proceeded to stick her middle finger up at him and use the wrong one.
Why you little? Oh man, we were at a house party once, and a friend of mine fell asleep in the armchair at the house party with a can of lager in his hand. And I took the can out, slowly poured it all over his crotch, put the can back in his hand, sat down, gave him a little kick, and went, Jim, have you pissed yourself? And he was like, no. And he tried to cover himself up frantically, thinking he has wet himself. You know, of course, everyone's roaring at laughter at this guy. And yeah, we are bastards, aren't we?
Scottish Danny said it perfectly. Chain wrestling confessions. Andy from Bam Bang, is it abuse in the workplace week? And this is a HR's wet dream. But luckily, none of this is being recorded.
There you go. Yeah, well, dear me. I did actually, speaking of confessions, I did at one stage,
Jesus
going back quite a
Christ.
way. No, I'm not going to give out any confessions. Nobody wants to hear my confessions. Jesus Christ, it can get dark. But I was toying with the idea of somehow getting a confessions episode done, but making it anonymous. And I was like, I don't quite know how we could have done that, but I imagine the CWF have got some horrific skeletons in their closet that they could share.
I mean, we could keep it anonymous, but we know, and we would forever judge those people.
That's the thing. We would know, and I wouldn't want people to not message us in, you know. So there we go. Okie doke then. I suppose, Magsy and Steve-O, we should maybe talk a little wrestling.
Oh, for fuck's sake! I've been dreading this.
Let's get ready to rumble!
I look like a Doctor Who villain now.
Is that just the same mask but metal looking?
Yeah, it's gold. I look like something out of the 1970s Doctor Who. I love it.
Okay. You look like a nonce.
I look like a nonce. How does that look like? Hang on.
Hang on.
How is that a nonce mask?
Just it is.
It looks like Dan Griffin, in the chat. It looks like maybe something from like Tom Baker robot era, something like that in Doctor Who, I think. I like it anyway, mate. I'm gonna wear it later on when I go out child catching. We're gonna
Brilliant.
Me messing around there, being a prat, trying to sort out my additional mask. I forgot to pick my notes up for the wrestling match, Magsy, but I got them now, so we're all prepared.
Good.
So I will start with you, our good buddy Steve-O. What were your thoughts on this?
You're not going to say the winner then? No, you're not going to mention that I finally won.
I was actually going to. I was just going to skirt around it, to be honest. But seeing as you're getting all narky and shouty about it, we better bring it up, hadn't we? Magsy won a poll, and
yes, he finally. I think it's 5 weeks in a row that you won. Felt like the Monday Night Wars all over again, and you were WCW.
I'd take that. Well, no, I'd say I'd take that. That's not good look, is it? Because they went out of business. But you know, I don't mind that. It's interesting that you won a poll with possibly the worst match you've put forward since the last time you won a poll as well.
I mean, I don't want to kind of show my cards too much, but I didn't think it was as bad as it is given discredit for.
Okay, interesting.
We've watched worse. I believe that we've watched worse.
Yes, Tony Atlas, we're looking at you.
Sting versus Meng on the beach.
Oh, you think that was worse than this?
Yeah, I do.
Why?
I mean, before we get into the match, it was clearly a match that should not have been in 1998. This was a match that was a decade old, and it went down a lot like a match that was a decade old.
I may as well rip up my notes.
But for a late 80s, early 90s style match, which what it essentially was, the first half wasn't that bad. It was a typical Hogan kind of wasting time and Warrior being the very poor wrestler that he was. But it was only when we get to the ridiculous like NWO and Fireball bullshit that it goes straight off a cliff. But the first 5-10 minutes, that was like the wrestling I watched as a kid. That was the wrestling that I got into as a kid. So I don't think it was that bad. It was bad. Don't get me wrong. It is bad, but it's just not as bad as it's been made out.
Okay. Steve-O, the match in question, obviously, is Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior, or just Warrior. We're not allowed to call him Ultimate. From Halloween Havoc 1998. Have you seen this before? Have you heard about any of the goings on and the build up for this?
You know how you both say that, well, especially you, Si, you say that wrestling didn't start in 1999. For me, it's like wrestling didn't start in 2016 because, honestly, I don't know anything before 2000, really.
Okay.
All this stuff is literally brand new to me. As I've mentioned to you before, I can't stand WCW. I don't know what it is. I just hate it.
It's bullshit like this.
Where's that fucking
the company is in the place it's in.
I genuinely just hate WCW, and maybe this is my bias towards it, but like I just watch this match and I just think this is just too. What did I write down here again? It's yeah, that's it. It's like watching two people impersonating wrestling. That's what it came across to me.
I'll tell you what, that's a good shout, actually.
That's actually really insightful. It's very reminiscent of like Holiday Camp or
yes, yeah,
or kind of like little town centre wrestling, like where
because
UK Undertaker or like things like that.
Did you watch the promo Hogan did at the start of the show or near the start of the show?
Yes.
I've literally written down there. I just said his intensity is genuinely amazing. Could you imagine if that was like that today? Because you just don't see it these days. You don't. No. I mean, don't get me wrong. It does happen. Like for instance, the other week with them, I saw a quick YouTube clip of MJF with William Regal, and I was like, "Oh, you've kind of grabbed me with the way you two are," but I just don't believe it. I just look at it and go, it just seems too scripted. In fact, while I'm doing my 2011 history, it's like everything's so scripted.
Yeah.
Even like a recent Raw that I watched, literally the Raw before WrestleMania 27. CM Punk is in the middle of the ring and you can tell he's kind of wanting to go off his own kind of tangent, but he's not allowed to. And he kind of, you can see that he's deliberately throwing in a few things that he shouldn't be saying. And he's kind of like winking to the camera to say, I shouldn't have said that, but I'm saying it anyway. And I'm slowly seeing this CM Punk coming out. But credit where credit, as a guy at work would say, credit where credit's due. I have to say that Hogan on the mic, I think is fucking fantastic. I mean that. I think he's absolutely brilliant. And I want to, because I deliberately watched that promo to understand what was going to happen in the following match. And I was like, I'm ready for this. I'm really looking forward to this match. Unfortunately.
And the match happened.
Well, this is the thing. And like, for me, the match happened and I'm just like, what am I watching? And I'm going to do an Ori the draw, when she says it got to the point where I was more interested in kind of ordering tickets for a gig that I'm going to than I am actually the match. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute I stopped watching the match but I just had to pause it because I'm just like, I'm not invested. I genuinely don't care. And it's just such a shame that from this promo that Hogan was giving us, to the entrance when he came out, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Like, because he was wearing exactly what he was wearing against The Rock at WrestleMania.
Mhm.
The exact same outfit, like the white, I don't know what you call it, the thing that he was wearing over
Feather
his head.
boas.
The boa, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just like, this is amazing. And then this lunatic, like, genuinely, once the Warrior came out, I just thought, has this bloke escaped from a mental health asylum? Because I'm just thinking, what the hell am I looking at here? Like, genuinely, this just looks like, to me, just looked ridiculous.
Mm.
I've been completely taken out of the moment now, because you've got Hogan coming out, he's playing the old air guitar and everything, he's enjoying himself, he's like, and I'm looking at him going, you're a superstar. Like I said, going back to this 2011, it's like with The Rock, Cena and Miz, you know, John Cena, this child happy, everybody loves Cena, from the kids and the mums and everything. I just look at him and think, nah, you're just a cartoon character. Then you got the Miz, who is just too clean, but then you see The Rock and you're like, superstar, real wrestler that I believe in. Same with Hogan. I look at Hogan, I think, you are amazing, you are something that I want to watch. But Warrior comes out, I'm just like, nah, not for me. And a quick question, was that actually the Warrior's music when he came out? Was it Hogan?
No. That was a remix, and that was the best part of the Warrior for me. I thought his music was really good. It's essentially his original music, but just with a guitar kind of like riff remix over the top of it.
So it was actually that it was the actual music of the time then.
The middle part of it was a little bit of Warrior's original WWF music. I think if I remember, it's like
Yeah. Magsy's best guitar riff there. That's fantastic.
No, that wasn't that was just the Warriors music, but
yeah,
I really like the guitar riff over the top of it.
The thing with the Ultimate Warrior, Steve-O, I think is it gets dictated to maybe by age. I'm a bit older than yourself, and my wife is, you know, she won't like me saying this, but she is of a similar age to me. She is a bit younger, don't get me wrong, but you know, and I think we
lived territory there, sir.
She's like 6 months difference, you sick bastard. Now, the Warrior in 89, 90, 91 in WWF, when we were like 8, 9, 10 years of age, this guy was larger than life. This guy, and he'd run to the ring and all the. And bear in mind, wrestling in the WWF at this time, it was very cartoony, and we were very young, so the cartoony things didn't offend me maybe as much as it does now. So we would see the Warrior, the face paint, that huge feathered hair and the tassels on his arms, and he would run to the ring to this big blaring heavy metal music, and it was exciting, Mags, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, he was right front and center of me when I first got into wrestling. He was the star, well, one of the early stars. I mean, he was essentially the Goldberg of his day. Mm-hmm. He would come out, the crowd would absolutely erupt. He would go in, hit 4 or 5 moves. 90 seconds later, he's picked up a victory, and away he goes. As of now, we look back and we see that he wasn't a good wrestler. He wasn't particularly a good person, but
no.
At the time, wrestling was totally going for a different demographic than it was in the 90s, and certainly than it is right now. So he appealed to the young kids. He appealed as like a superhero, just like the yellow and red Hulk Hogan did. So in the 80s and early 90s, this worked. The wrestling wasn't the main reason why you liked this guy. It was the character. But as wrestling fans' taste changed and we saw more kind of mix into mainstream and reality, this kind of wrestling got left by the wayside. So that's why the first half of this match for me is like a throwback. And obviously that was the point. That was what Hogan was looking to do, bring in people who he trusted and he could work with and he knew he could draw money with. But also he had that win that he needed to get back from the Warrior, which is something that Hogan had kind of he festered about over the 8-9 years since they last had a one-on-one match against each other. So that was the reason why Warrior was brought in for this short run. He made a hell of a lot of money out of it. But the match, if we could just judge off that first 5-10 minutes, it'd be all right, not memorable. It's when it gets ridiculous that it pisses me off.
What I didn't. The reason why I kind of like wanted to look at the promo and I wanted to look at certainly the prior to the match starting, I was hoping there'd be like a promo package. There was nothing. What was the actual point in the match?
This isn't WWF, you know. They don't give you the storyline.
WCW were not that great when it came to recapping. I mean, I've got a little bit here just to sort of fill in the blanks, I guess. There was an episode of Nitro where Hogan, who was obviously the leader of the NWO, he's running his mouth saying he's beaten everybody. There's no one left for him to beat. He's defeated everyone they can possibly throw at him, which wasn't true, but we'll skirt over that. And he even mentions the line, "There's no warriors out there left for me to vanquish, or no warriors out there left for me to defeat." And that's when the Ultimate Warrior turned up on Nitro. Now, they were supposed to have a 10-minute segment. The Warrior quite famously likes to rant, and you can never understand what the guy's on about. He went close to half an hour with this promo on a live Nitro, which caused Eric Bischoff to have to rewrite the show frantically as they were already broadcasting because he overran by 20 minutes in this crazy promo.
Is this available on the network? Just of interest.
Yes, it'll be on. Yes, all the Nitros and all that.
On the Nitros in the build up to this show. Yeah.
Yes. From there, obviously, Hogan and the Warrior, we all know, are going to be heading towards a match at some point, and then it starts getting silly. And then it starts getting silly. Yeah, because the Warrior has this kind of almost like they want sort of an Undertaker kind of mystique to him, a sort of magical side to the character. So they fill the ring with dry ice quite often, and he would just appear in the ring, which actually was through a trap door that they'd worked into the canvas for him to appear and disappear.
Which crippled Davey Boy Smith because he stood on it and injured himself.
Yeah, he took a bump on the thing, and it basically wrecked him completely. We had several moments of that where the Warrior would appear and then disappear, and Hogan would act all freaked out and sometimes would quite over dramatically shake with fear in front of the camera because the Warrior was here and all this. There was also the famous scenes where the Hogan would be in his dressing room preparing for the match, and the Warrior would appear in Hogan's mirror. But Hogan would be in the room with the likes of Bischoff and other NWO members, and they would be acting like they couldn't see the Warrior in the mirror. It's all in Hogan's mind. But we, the viewers at home, could see the Warrior. So it made zero sense. And this would eventually build up. And you know, the Warrior started what they called One Warrior Nation, which was a play on the NWO initials, to battle the NWO. But that group consisted of Diamond Dallas Page and Roddy Piper. So it wasn't really a massive threat, to be fair.
And
to
the Disciple. Don't forget.
And the
convinced the Disciple to not lacquer for old Terry Bollea anymore.
I don't want to talk about Ed Leslie at all. I thought we were going to get for a whole week without having to mention Brutus the fucking Barber. Thank you, Max. But yeah, that's kind of how it all built towards this match at Halloween Havoc. And I agree with you, Steve-O. The Hogan entrance is just... I love the Hollywood Hogan version of this guy. The NWO is fantastic. We're only a couple of weeks away from it now on Nitro Nights with our sort of look back through WCW. I think we're about 5 or 6 episodes away from Scott Hall arriving and it all kicking off and starting. Hogan is fantastic in this role. And the Warrior returning, as shite as a lot of it was, Magsy, I agree with as well. His entrance, I loved his entrance because it took me back to being that 8-year-old kid watching the guy on Sky Sports or Sky Movies. I think the pay-per-views were on at one stage when we were younger, Magsy, wasn't it? Yeah. And it was just like, and the fireworks going off as he ran down and so on. But yeah, then the bell had to ring, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, before we even get to the bell, though, you get Hogan. Before Warrior comes out, he's the cock of the walk, showing off to the fans. Then once Warrior's in the ring,
so good.
He's like the typical cowardly heel, but he keeps saying that he's going to kill the Warrior. And he literally says to one of the fans, "I'm going to murder this man." On camera, he says, Hulk Hogan, I'm going to murder this man. I bet Scottish Danny was so disappointed when he didn't see a stabbing.
There's a bit where Hogan has an altercation with a fan, and it's obvious that Hogan doesn't like what this fan's saying, because it's obvious that he's turning around like, get this guy out. Obviously he didn't get kicked out, but he didn't like something this bloke had said to him. And it's the kind of good thing that I did get from this is that the fans really were giving Hogan some stick. Like, they were really passionate about not liking him.
Have you seen much of the beginning of the NWO?
I'll be honest with you. When I listen into Nitro Nights, when you start it, that's when I'm going to start learning about the NWO, because I remember a Chain Wrestling episode where you literally said we could do a whole episode on, or do a separate episode on the NWO, and I just went, do it, just do it. Now, obviously, literally a year later, you're now doing your own podcast about WCW and the rise of Nitro and everything, and I'm genuinely going to be fascinated to start listening to you and Danny's opinions on the start of the NWO, because I know, and I'll be honest with you, the only thing I know about the NWO is from their run in WWE. That's it. Obviously, I know it's Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hulk Hogan, but I don't know really what their impact was on the wrestling industry. Nothing. That's how naive I am, because I'm like, yeah, great, who cares? But I think it's because I came into wrestling really late. So a bit like with Benny Mac, he said on the episode, which was last year, but I heard it the other day as well. He said that he started watching wrestling in 2000. Right. That's pretty much like me. And then, like a lot of your podcasts have revealed with a lot of like with David Eaton, he says because the Royal Rumble 2000 was on Channel 4, straight away, that's when I got involved with wrestling. And, it's something with the NWO where, thanks to you guys, and like come booking the Territory and Bang Bang podcast, I have learnt a bit, but for me, I need the detail. So when, like you've just said, then Scott Hall comes into play, I'm going to find out what the big deal is with that, of Scott Hall coming over, and then obviously the start of the NWO. So in a long-winded way, do I know much about the NWO? No, I don't.
Right. You mentioned, the reason I brought that up was because you said about the interactions with the fans and so on. The level of heat the NWO drew was incredible, Magsy, wasn't it? I mean, the actual turn of Hogan, it's quite a famous scene with all the trash getting thrown in the ring because people were that disgusted at Bash at the Beach '96. It's quite an image to behold. It really is. Seeing all that coming in.
At WrestleMania 2000, when for me, I know you guys hated it, and I know for fact Rob and Dan hated it. I think WrestleMania 2000, the storyline with Hunter Hearst with the Helmsley regime and everything, I think it's fucking brilliant.
I love McMahon in every corner, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes. And McMahon turning on the Rock, and everybody just fucking launching everything into the ring. For me, that's my NWO Bash at the Beach.
Okay.
That's how powerful that moment is for me. But I can appreciate the fact that at Bash at the Beach, how important that moment is for you guys. I genuinely can.
Yeah, I mean, the level of heat is ridiculous. I mean, there's moments that, with regards to the NWO, there's famous gifs, Magsy, isn't there? The old lady trying to punch Hogan from the crowd.
Stunt granny.
The stunt granny.
The original stunt granny.
Yeah, all the rubbish that gets thrown in the ring all the time. There's quite a famous one of Scott Hall. It's one of my favourites. He gets hit on the head with a beer, I think, or a soda, as he's leaning to do his little pose. And when it hits him, it absolutely soaks him. And he just styles it out by slicking his hair back and carries on. And Scott Hall is the coolest fucker in the world. But you also get situations that will come to on Nitro Nights as well, where people genuinely called the police when they were walking through certain places and saw the NWO attacking WCW wrestlers. They thought this was legit, gang warfare, so to speak. Yeah. And the police were being called.
There's a famous one where Kevin Nash essentially throws Rey Mysterio into a production truck, and the police were called for that one because the fans thought it was genuine that he'd really been assaulting poor little Rey Mysterio.
But I'm somebody that loves this stuff, like knowing this, because the one for me where I thought it's real, but it wasn't real. But it for me was real. Was when ECW invaded WWE back in 97, 98 with Tommy Dreamer, Sandman, Taz was there.
Yeah, they were all sat on the
And-
side, weren't they?
Yeah, and
Mhm.
there was a bit where one of the WWE guys clock one of the ECW things, and I genuinely was like, this is for me, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
However many years, 30 odd years later, or whatever the time period is, I'm thinking, even I'm getting fooled by this, whether it was real or not, I couldn't care less. I'm drawn in, as Mags would say, you're a mark. you're a mark. Yeah, I'm glad I'm a mark because I want to believe what's going on here.
Absolutely.
My favorite kind of wrestling is when I believe what's going on. It's why I can't stand wrestling now because
Yeah.
I just don't believe it. It's just too nah. It's why I love the whole shenanigans with the scrummage with the whole Tony Khan, CM Punk, the Young Bucks, and Kenny Omega. It's like, this is amazing because it's actually real.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to know the real story behind it and everything. And you're hearing about Chris Jericho coming out, what he's saying about CM Punk and stuff. And it's like, this is when I want to try and get invested in it because I know this is real. And back in the day, back in like 99, 2000, they play on it.
Mhm.
Now they can't. They don't want to. And it actually annoys me, to be honest with you. It's why I'm kind of like annoyed that I just don't want to watch wrestling these days because I know that there is a product out there, whether it's WWE, NXT, or AEW, which provide such a like the wrestling that they provide these days is so much better than back then. But storyline wise and everything, I'm just like, nah, I don't care because I don't believe it. Whereas back then, you telling me about like this whole NWO and the police being called and everything, and me saying about the ECW and whatnot, I'm like, but I believe it. And I'm glad I believe it.
Yeah.
I'm glad I've been caught up in this.
And you're right, because it really does play into realism. I know we're going off on a bit of a tangent here. We will come back, listeners. To
That's
the
because we
Hogan
did
Warrior
all
match.
we can to avoid talking about this match.
But the old NWO situation, it touched upon real life because obviously Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were Razor Ramon and Diesel in the WWF.
Mm.
They were big players for the WWF in that era. They were championship holders and so on. Their contracts expired. They jumped across, but they were never addressed as Diesel or Razor. But they were also never addressed as not being Diesel and Razor. So WCW and Eric Bischoff did a fantastic job of kind of hinting that the WWF were actually invading WCW and blurring the lines. And that was the whole kind of the outsiders gimmick, was they were the outsiders because they were from the other company. And Scott Hall, one of his famous lines to Eric Bischoff was, "You wanted a war, you've got a war. Here we are. And we've got a third man." And they were supposed to be invading from the other company. And that was kind of the whole gimmick with regards to the NWO. And it gave wrestling a massive kick up the arse because all of a sudden these bad guys were cool because they were cool. You know, Scott Hall is one of the coolest guys to ever live. And from there, the kickoff from there, you had the Attitude Era kicking off as well. DX, DX are fantastic. I love DX, but they were very much in the wheelhouse of what the NWO were doing already.
It was a reaction. It was a reaction to the NWO. Yeah,
the NWO very much is like the pebble thrown in the pond and the ripples coming out. Crossed wrestling, didn't they? So,
yeah, absolutely.
Shall we talk this shit though?
Well, it kind of links us into what you were saying there about the fans reacting to Hogan the way they were during this specific match.
Yeah,
totally.
Even when Hogan jumped to WCW a few years before, he wasn't getting the best of reactions. It wasn't like Hogan of 89, 90, where he was everybody's favorite. Wrestling, as in general, had got bored of Hogan, had got bored of the eating your vitamins, saying your prayers, all that malarkey. And when he turned heel, which was a brave thing to do for someone in Hogan's spot, because he had been the face of wrestling for so long, the fans gravitated to him because it was such a massive change, and it did blur the lines of is this real or is this a character? And then you're seeing Hogan with totally a different person and going against the fans, and that not only revitalized his career, but it revitalized the wrestling world. I mean, we can give Hogan all the grief, and it's very deserved for the person he is behind the scenes. But it's not overstating that he, alongside with the Outsiders, changed wrestling monumentally with the NWO.
It was so realistic, and the lines were blurred so much. And we will cover this on Nitro Nights as we get to it. I mean, first of all, we're seeing now, literally the episodes that Scottish Danny and I are recording now, those mixed reactions that Magsy pointed out, they're not that mixed at this point. Now we're in 96. Hogan's getting openly booed by the WCW fans for being the red and yellow Hogan. He's openly getting shut on in certain markets. And when it got to the NWO stuff and the blurring of the lines between this is Razor and Diesel invading and so on. For example, Scott Hall, he's still doing the Razor Ramon voice and some of the mannerisms and that sort of Scarface kind of rip-off character. The WWF tried to sue WCW for this. You know, the lawsuits went back and forth between the two companies quite often in this period of wrestling, because the NWO, being an invading group, an invading factor, and hinted at being an invading factor from the WWF, it was so close to the line that Vince McMahon was like, this needs nipping in the bud. And they tried to take them to court. They settled out of court quite often for vast sums of money. Ted Turner had to pay a lot of money to Vince McMahon for this sort of shit. But yeah, it was so close to the bone and done so well that the realism and the working aspect of wrestling were blurred that cleverly that lawsuits were thrown left, right, and center, Magsy, weren't they?
Yeah, and then it led to the turn in the punch bowl that was fake Diesel and fake Razor, because the WWF thought that it wasn't
Steve-O's face.
Awful.
But Vince and the WWF's reasoning was that the fans were fans of the characters of Razor and Diesel, and that anybody could fit in those places, almost like they were actors. But when we got Glenn Jacobs and Rick Bogner, and the fans absolutely shit on it, they realized that it's not always the gimmick, it's not always the character. Sometimes the fans gravitate to the wrestler themselves.
Yeah, exactly. The issue with WCW, especially in this time frame, I mean, WCW got hot because of the NWO mid-96. 97 was huge. Goldberg was the big explosion of 98. Sort of late 97 going into 98 and so on. The issue that WCW had, and we see it here, is that storyline-wise, sports entertainment-wise, for want of a better term, a lot of TV time and storylines and interview time was invested in the main event players, so the NWO and so on. That was great for a while, but as always, things eventually do get stale. But they didn't really let go, potentially, when they should have let go. But the undercard in WCW, the cruiserweight division, the tag division, certain mid-card matches, that's where a wrestling fan can really get, there's stuff to really get your teeth into there. I mean, the episode of Nitro Nights that Danny and I recorded yesterday, that'll be with you in a couple of weeks. There's a match between two, Chris Benoit is part of the Four Horsemen. Eddie Guerrero is effectively a relative unknown in the States at this point. And they're just thrown together on an episode of Nitro. They only go 12 minutes. But it steals the show. It's fantastic. And that was the issue we had with WCW, Magsy, wasn't it? The main events were, in theory, the attraction, but in ring, they would shit the bed. Yeah. Whereas the undercard maybe wouldn't get the investment in the storylines, but wrestling quality, the undercard was so much better than what the WWF were doing at the time. The WWF undercard was dire. WCW undercard was top class. The difference was, though, the WWF main events at the time, in 96, you had a prime Shawn Michaels doing what he could do. In 96, in WCW, you had Hogan, Roddy Piper, and people who were past their prime. So it was a weird kind of dynamic, wasn't it, Magsy?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's almost like yin and yang of shows.
Spot. That's a really good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, the wrestling in the first half of a WCW pay-per-view was usually spot on, was absolutely brilliant. And then, like I said, they shit the bed for the main events. that's so contrasted with a WWF show where you could totally miss the first 4 matches of a pay-per-view and you wouldn't miss any good wrestling, and then just focus on the main event. So yeah, they were very yin and yang when it come to the output of the content.
Exactly. Getting back to Halloween Havoc 1998, however.
We don't want to talk about this fucking match.
We have to.
That's
It's the
the
way the
fact.
show works. It's the way the show works. The people have spoken. The votes have come in. Magsy, you won a poll. We need to discuss the match that won.
It feels like when you want something for so long, and then when you finally get it, you didn't want it. And I'm a typical wrestling fan. I don't know what I want until I get it. Then I realize I didn't want it.
Brilliant. We start with obviously the entrances, which we've already ran through, which I thought were fantastically done. But both guys I thought looked great. The Warrior looks in incredible shape. Hogan here is not a young man by any stretch of the imagination, and he looks fantastic as well.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm in no position to criticize anyone's physique, of course. Look at me, I look like a munch. But
It's funny you say that, because it's funny you bring that up, because from my personal background, like being in the gym world and stuff, a lot of the time I actually look at wrestlers' physiques and critique the way they look. And I look at Warrior and Hogan, I think, you are absolute specimens. But weirdly, like, Ultimate Warrior's arms are really like skinny. They're really small compared to the rest of his body. Whereas Hogan, it's almost like the perfect physique. But Ultimate Warrior, yeah. Ultimate Warrior's got the full package bar in the arms. If you gave Ultimate Warrior Hogan's arms to Ultimate Warrior, you've got an absolute incredible specimen there. I'm not suggesting for a minute Ultimate Warrior wasn't a specimen then anyway, but I just found it very strange that the whole of Ultimate Warrior's body is just perfection apart from his arms. It's just an observation I make. But both of them, you're completely right side, just stunning.
Yeah.
Perhaps he didn't want his arms to get too big because he'd need to buy longer shoelaces. And they might be more expensive. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Maybe he tied the shoelaces a bit too tight and his muscles atrophied.
Like Paul Orndorff.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
or Jeremy Beadle.
Yeah, Jeremy. Okay, that wasn't his muscles didn't atrophy. He just had a little funny hand, didn't he? He was like that guy from the scary movies, wasn't he? Like my strong hand.
It was very bizarre.
Stop it. Anyway, Jeremy Beadle is
That's
no
a
longer
film
with us.
reference by sight. That's
It is,
incredible.
mate. It is.
Bloody hell.
I'm glad you pointed that out. Thank you. We get a line here from Tony Schiavone during the entrances that he states. I mean, first of all, the original match was 8 years ago, so it's not a decade past. It's 7.5 years ago, 8 years ago. Tony Schiavone states quite, brazenly and boldly that this is the rematch wrestling fans have been waiting for a decade. Tony Schiavone, you fucking liar.
You paedophile liar, Tony Schiavone.
Oh my god! Can we stop calling people who could potentially sue us pedos?
Sue us, yeah.
Can we avoid that from now on? Maybe we should just draw a line in the sand.
We can try to.
Okay, as long as the effort is getting put in, I'm okay with that. The match starts with some wrist locks from both guys. And then quite a bit of stalling as well. Hogan does, as Magsy explained, drops to the outside, interacts with the fans and so on. I don't mind that because as a fan, you want the babyface to get hold of the bad guy. The bad guy is dropped to the outside, wasting a bit of time, stalling, etc. And it builds up the feeling between the crowd and the heel. They're booing the guy because they want to see him get his ass kicked, and he's stalling, isn't he?
Yeah. And there's so many in this first 5 or so minutes. There's so many callbacks to their WrestleMania match, and I think that may be a kind of a factor of why I didn't think it was the worst thing that I've ever seen, because you get the typical Hogan and Warrior 3 moves of wrestling. You get wrist locks. You get crossing the ropes. All classic Hogan and Warrior stuff, and then you get the test of strength again, another kind of a WrestleMania throwback. So
Didn't
for
that,
me,
sorry, Magdy, didn't it look though from that one camera, from the hard cam? So you know, Steve, I'm assuming you know what I mean. The hard cam,
Yeah.
the standard, yeah. Didn't it?
I may
look,
not know wrestling, but I know a hard
Yeah.
cam.
Didn't it look like the Ultimate Warrior was just giving Hogan a bit of a nosh?
I mean, who's to say? I cannot comment on that.
Okay. I mean, obviously, you got your jizz guard up there right now, just in case. So I thought I'd pick your brains because you're the expert. Oh, it always comes back to willies and pedos with us, doesn't it? Never mind.
Can you have a bit of professionalism, please, sir?
I apologise.
About paedophiles.
We need to stop with the pedo shit. I'm not even joking. This is on my own network now. We need to cut this crap out. It was all right when we were elsewhere, but this has to stop.
As paedophilia should do. Stop paedophilia. We're
That's
looking
a
at you,
t-shirt right
Tony
there.
Schiavone.
That's a t-shirt right there. That'll be available by Christmas. The test of strength or warrior nosh is my my notes I've got here. Also, Hogan's boots are cool as fuck, aren't they? When you see him stood there, like, and you get a proper look at his wrestling boots, they are so fucking cool.
Where Warrior's orange boots were horrific.
Yeah, Hogan. It's not something I suppose you can really, I suppose, quite often put at Hogan in that he moves with the times, because the NWO version of Hogan, the heel turn or whatever, came probably. We had to sit through 2 years of him being booed, so he didn't move with the times as quickly as he should. But at least he's moved with the times at all. Warrior here in '98 is doing what made Warrior popular in '88. And wrestling in '88 is completely different to wrestling in '98, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's kind of the point I was making at the beginning, that if you judge this as a match in a singularity, it's fine. The first half of it is fine. But if you judge it as a match from 1998, it's dog shit, because that's not the wrestling that people in 1998 wanted. And I think that's why it goes down like a lead balloon, not only in 1998, but still now, that people judge it along the wrestling that was surrounding it. I mean, if you go just the match before this on the card, you've got Sting versus Bret Hart. Whilst that match was not the best match that those two would have, it's infinitely better than this match. And those are two wrestlers from the same era, but they've kind of evolved their wrestling as the time went on. Hogan and Warrior haven't evolved. These are still Hogan and Warrior from 1990. And I think that's the issue that people have with the match.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, sort of expanding on that, the roster in WCW in '98, you had a prime Rey Mysterio. I mean, Rey Mysterio, when he eventually arrived in WWF, he was fantastic, but knee injuries had took his toll. WCW Rey Mysterio was incredible, groundbreaking. He was doing things that people had never seen before. Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, all these guys. And again, we come back to the undercard was fantastic as a wrestling fan for actual wrestling. And Magsy is spot on. This just seems so dated when you put it up against stuff, even from the same pay-per-view.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it was 8 years since their last match, and those 8 years were not canned to this match whatsoever.
No, I think you're right. We also get a lot of pointing and shouting, don't we? There's quite a bit of that going on.
And a lot of no selling. Nobody sells at all in this match whatsoever.
Apparently, they weren't on particularly good terms at this stage in their career as well, Hogan and Warrior. Hogan convinced Bischoff to reach out and bring Warrior in because he thought he could make money with him. And he wanted to get his win back, obviously, from WrestleMania 6, which is ridiculous. It's a work, Terry. Come on. But they weren't on good terms by the time they got to the pay-per-view. So I don't know if that played a part.
Perhaps. But they both had massive egos anyway. So it was very unlikely one of them was going to lay down for the other one.
Yeah. Everyone's aware of my feelings towards the bear hug. They know I'm not a big fan of that move in any way, shape, or form. I think in this match we see something that rivals how much I dislike the bear hug, and that's what it's referred to on commentary and is known as the crisscross. So both wrestlers are running the ropes, but they're running the ropes in different directions. What the fuck is this?
Sorry, mate. Whenever I've heard you in the past say about the crisscross, your line you usually say, which is, "I've never ever seen." It's just genius. Two men fighting in a pub car park, crisscrossing.
It's true. It's true. I want to believe wrestling's real.
However, for me, I don't have a problem with that. I personally don't have an issue with it because, ironically, it's wrestling. I know it's kind of like contradictory in the sense of like, well, hold on a minute, Steve. 1 minute you're saying you want realism, the next minute this is something that's just so ridiculous that. But at least I believe it. I know what they're doing.
Okay.
It's crap. Like when I found it quite embarrassing actually when Warrior kind of was like, "Oh yeah, let's just do the test of strength with my hand and stuff," and it was just like it was like a fart in church. It just went down like nothing, and Hogan was just like, "No, we're not doing it." It was just awful.
And then 30 seconds later wants to do it when he's got Warrior in the corner. Going back to the crisscross, though, it just reminds me of Scalextrics.
Oh,
You know, when you build the track and it crosses over like a figure of eight, and then one car is like going one side and they crash into each other. You're always hoping for that crash, but it's like I said, it goes down like a fart in church in 1998. In 1990, this was awesome. These two running the ropes at the same time. It was one of the best things ever. 8 years later,
I got to disagree, mate. Even in 1990,
maybe not one of the best things ever, but still a cool visual of Hogan and Warrior at WrestleMania doing the crisscross. That is a cool visual.
It's just two blokes going for a run.
No, I know, but as a 10-year-old wrestling fan, it's cool. As a 18-year-old wrestling fan, it's dog shit.
I'll tell you, as a 10-year-old wrestling fan, I reckon I probably still looked at this and thought this is shite.
Well, fuck you.
Okay. We get some awful punches by the pair as well in the corner. Really and I look at, again, it shows how talented some wrestlers are. Because I see, in theory, throwing a punch to somebody like us who's never been in the ring and we're outside looking in, throwing a working punch, I suppose is the term. It should be kind of straightforward in comparison to some of the more complex moves that these guys do. However, when you see people as established and who has made as much money as the Warrior, The Rock is another example, whose punches look like shit. And then you see the likes of Bret Hart, Ric Flair, and even some of the guys on the indies that I've seen and local shows and so on, throw punches that look like they've genuinely just broken someone's jaw. Maybe it's something that some people get and some people don't. I don't know.
It's the subjectivity, I suppose, of wrestling.
Yeah, I guess. Eventually, we get a really rubbish ref bump, don't we?
Oh,
No,
literally.
no, I will not have this. This was brilliant. It was brilliant because it was so bad. But what made it for me was Hogan dropping the knee on Nick Patrick in the corner. I thought that was classy. That was brilliant. I mean, I can't stand Nick Patrick anyway. The guy just boils my piss. But to see Hogan accidentally drop the knee and then go back about 3 or 4 minutes later and do exactly the same thing, I thought that was spot on. That was typical douchebag Hogan.
Is that mask restricting how much oxygen you'll get into your brain?
Blood, yeah, it's cutting out the blood. Why am I the way I am?
We get an awful ref bump, and then as standard practice is, I guess, for this time of WCW, we get some NWO members joining the party, don't we? We get the Giant coming out, who I think we're looking at some brilliant stuff with the Giant at the moment on Nitro Nights, but we also get Stevie Ray, who doesn't come across as great, and Vincent, bless him.
I mean, it's not an NWO running if Vincent doesn't get clocked. So that's just natural law. But what always winds me up about an NWO running is when something goes wrong, the wrestlers just stand there waiting to be beat up by the babyfaces. So in this example, we had the Giant come down, goes to kick Warrior in the face. Warrior ducks, he kicks Hogan, and then he stands there like a wet lemon, like, oh my God, what have I done? What is going on? I'll just step a few steps towards this rope, and then suddenly Warrior comes off and does the close. And it's so scripted, and we know wrestling's scripted, but this shows that it's scripted. And then you've got Stevie Ray and Vincent come, don't bother even attempting to get in the ring, just stand on the apron, ready to get punched and dropped. Those three should be able to come out and beat the living piss out of Warrior. And they never do, and they get one shot, and that's it. You don't see them again. They go away. I mean, great mates. If ever I was in a fight and three of my mates got one hit and then they walked off, be like, they're not in my gang anymore. You're out of the NWO. But yeah,
they're not in your gang. Have you got a gang, Max?
Do I not look like a gang kind of guy?
Do you traipse the car parks of supermarkets in Burnley with your gang?
Yeah, we fight other gangs. I mean, I'm a little car park kind of guy.
Lidl for life.
If those Aldi toss pots come to Lidl, yeah, we'll cross over through cars to make sure we don't hit each other.
Fuck you know, what is my life? What are we talking about? Hogan here then. Oh, sorry, I was going to ask you, Steve-O. Vincent, are you aware who that is?
I guess.
Right.
You're lucky that I just about know who Booker T is. It Booker T's brother, cousin, whatever, Stevie?
That's his actual brother, Stevie Ray.
Yeah. The $1 Million Man in WWF had a bodyguard named Virgil. And Virgil was apparently named this because Dusty Rhodes was the main booker for what was the version of WCW back in the day. And Dusty Rhodes' real name is Virgil Runnels. And they named, the story goes, they named the bodyguard who was always getting his ass kicked, Virgil, to take the piss out of Dusty Rhodes, who was on the other channel. Now, that's never been confirmed, but that's what they thought. So when that individual, Virgil, left and joined WCW, they named him Vincent as a dig at Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he always gets battered.
Yeah. So really mature behavior from people who are, high ups in the wrestling business there. Hogan uses an old ploy of his with his weightlifting belt and starts beating the piss out of the Warrior with it.
I want to talk about this bit because can you tell me if this was a no disqualification match or not?
This is a note I have as well, my friend.
It wasn't no disqualification. I'll just tell you that it was.
So it was just a straight normal match, because I get really angry in any match where it's, it's no disqualification, but when a wrestler decides to do something which is against the rules, the referee just turns a blind eye or allows it to go on.
Doesn't want to throw the match out. It's bollocks.
Yeah, and it's like Wade Keller of PW Torch always used to say about, for instance, whenever JR would say, it's now a no disqualification, we can do whatever we want. And Wade Keller would make the point, all right, then we'll just send anybody in the ring then. Just do whatever you want if it's a no disqualification. And when Hogan started beating Ultimate Warrior with a belt and then vice versa, I'm just like, but surely the match should be finished. There's a bit in the, sorry to keep banging on about this, but I am literally watching it as we speak. The 2011 era. There's a bit where I can't remember who it is now, but the tag match just gets stopped immediately because one of the wrestlers pulls the ref out the ring, and I'm like, what, you've stopped the match for that? Like, this is just ridiculous. And yet, like a match later, the referee gets knocked out, but nothing happens, and another ref comes out to continue the match. It's like, what's going on here? There's no continuity to it. It's just really frustrating.
That is spot on. No continuity. Yeah, exactly. And I've got a big issue with it because, and I've always had an issue, and it's difficult for me to verbalize why it bothered me so much until I started sitting down with our good friend Joshua Goodwin for NXT Rise and Fall. And he explains so much about his insight into the wrestling business, having been in the ring and being very, very good at what he does. you need rules in place for the bad guy to break them. So when the rules no longer matter, all of a sudden then it's a case of, okay, well then, the good guy has nothing to overcome with the bad guy cheating and all this sort. And it's so simple, but it's right. And this here with the belt, it should be a DQ. The match should be thrown out, or they should just not fucking do it.
Yeah.
I don't think it added anything to the match. I mean, lads, tell me if I'm wrong, but did the spot change anything?
Yeah, it does, because when
I knew you were
Warrior...
going to be like this.
No, and I actually rewound the match when I was watching it to make sure I was right. But the point with the belt is it's so Hogan can blade.
Okay.
Because when Warrior wraps the belt around his hand and hits him, everyone thinks that Hogan is bleeding when Warrior comes off the top rope and does the axe handle, but it's not. You actually see Hogan blading whilst taking the leather belt to the face. That's why it was there. But I totally agree with you both. The continuity of rules applying and not was a massive problem in WCW. They only seem to apply when the storyline dictated it. Otherwise, it tended to be a free for all, especially with Hogan.
And that comes back to Steve-O's point of continuity, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the whole wrestling belt section was to give Hogan the chance to blade.
But then, and this to me then comes to the point where this is potentially overbooked, because you've had a ref bump and the NWO B squad, I suppose, running down to get involved. That didn't need to happen. Nothing was gained from that. Could you not have had a ref bump and then Hogan used the belt instead?
Exactly.
Would that have not made more sense?
Yeah,
it's just
you're absolutely right.
Too much going on.
NWO matches and WCW main events typically at this time were overbooked. There were so many twists, turns, and swerves that they were there just as a matter of course. If you had a straightforward match, it would look out of place in WCW in this era. There had to be the twists and turns for the sake of twists and turns.
Yeah, I get you. We get some weird rolling around by the Warrior as well, don't we?
This was mental, ridiculous.
The first couple of times, I get that, because I think it was timed really well, because Hogan's going to drop an elbow, and it looks like he's going to land the elbow, and at the last second, Warrior rolls out the way. I thought that looked really good. Then he did it again, and it didn't look quite as good, but it still worked. But I think maybe the Warrior, similar to my youngest daughter Anya, when she would start rolling over as a kid, she would roll over and roll over and roll over, and then she'd like hit a bit of furniture and be like, "Shit, I can't move anymore, Dad." I think the Warrior did that. He rolled over and rolled over, got to the corner of the ring, and was like, "Crap, I've run out of ring.
I'll roll back." Though.
Yeah,
the issue was he went, "I'll roll back," and
Tony Schiavone tries to sell it as a brilliant offensive move by the Warrior, rolling into Hogan's shin.
Yeah, I mean Hogan falling over because the Warrior rolled into him was absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, that was when it's. I mean, no, it started to go weird well before that, but yeah, that was a very much a weird part of this match. Horrific.
Not a good look, mate. Not a good look. And it's at this stage I've got a note saying the crowd are silent.
Oh my God. I can't believe you just said that, right? You won't be able to see this, but literally, I've written here, the commentator, I think it's Tony Schiavone. You won't be able to read this. Elite FBL fans will never be able to read it, but I literally have written there, it says this. Commentator, this is Tony Schiavone. The Warrior needs energy from the fans. I've written, they're silent.
Yeah, he's fucked then.
Yeah. The Warrior needs energy from somewhere because he ran to the ring and he's already blown up from that. Is the problem.
and the only time you really hear anything from the fans, it's saying Warrior sucks, which
Yes,
is
yes.
which is
Yeah.
against the point of bringing the Warrior back in the first
There's
place.
also a little boring chant that much before this, but like the test of strength, Warrior noshing Hogan off moment. There's a bit of a boring chant around there that sort of starts to get going, but sort of disappears as well. So the crowd are already, even at that early part of the match, they're losing interest already, boys, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. I mean, they lost interest when we got the 80s style crisscrossing and test of strength. Then we get to roly-poly around the ring, kneeing a referee in the face, the multiple NWO run-ins, and then the next part we're going to come to, and these fans were like, I've just watched. Somebody just she puts Joshua up. I've just watched Sting versus Bret Hart. Now I'm watching this load of bollocks. What the fuck is this pay-per-view?
Yes, exactly. The Ultimate Warrior gets a go with the weight belt as well, starts lashing that around, and then we get to a moment that I think is probably more synonymous with this match than anything other than the Warrior appearing in the mirror to everybody apart from Eric Bischoff in that dressing room. Hogan decides he wants to try and burn the Warrior and doesn't quite get it right. Magsy, do you want to talk us through this shit show?
So he's had this plastic pack in his tart all match, pulls it out.
Which is usually, by the way, it's just normally full of Coke.
Yeah, well, not remembering this part, I thought it was actually a bag of the magic white powder, but no, it's instead he's double bagged some flash paper and a cheap throwaway lighter. He tries to set it on fire, it doesn't work, and then as he's throwing it, it goes off in his hand. So Warrior, who obviously knew the spot was happening, acts a little bit like the firing got him. They both look at each other and think, what the fuck do we do now? and then this is where it gets ridiculous because Warrior...
this is where it gets ridiculous, yeah?
It's Warrior that takes the lead. I mean, Hogan is the face of this company. Hogan's been in wrestling for decades. Warrior has been out of wrestling for 8 years. But Warrior takes the lead and decides that he's going to go and do a double axe handle from the top rope, which makes about as much contact as a Shane McMahon punch. It was fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
But Hogan then sold it. He's not sold anything else during this match, but then decides to sell a fucking double axe handle that doesn't make any contact with him. It's ridiculous. And that's the reason this gets gifted so much. That fireball setting on fire to Hogan's hand and then Warrior acting like he's been hit in the face. It's just horrific by WCW on this.
Two things with the fireball then, okay? And we'll get both of your thoughts. Well, first of all, a funny thing that tickled me when I was looking into this match, Eric Bischoff has said in various interviews and so on, that when the fireball did go off, the flash paper did go off in Hogan's hand, it actually burnt his own eyebrows and mustache.
Good.
Which is
good.
Fantastic.
The tosser.
But that aside, if that had worked, if he lit it and thrown it and it hit the Warrior in the face, that would have been quite a dramatic visual. Would that have been enough to maybe not save the match, but maybe give a different viewpoint to us now looking back if it had worked?
Well, I need to know what the context is of the fireball, because, for instance, the only fireball, there's been a couple, haven't there, been in WWF, for instance, Kane on The Undertaker, or vice versa, or Kane, or X-Pac to Kane. But what was the point in it here? What was the significance of a fireball from Hogan to Warrior? Just random.
Apparently, it was Hogan's idea for the spot. There's no context to it. There's no history of Hogan using this, but it was supposed to be a big moment in this match where Hogan was going to use the fireball and then from there go on and eventually win the contest and so on. And it was supposed to be quite a dramatic visual of this fire coming out of Hogan's hands, hitting the Warrior in the face, and then the Warrior ultimately getting beaten by Hogan, not clean. So in theory, it helps the Warrior. And Hogan is like, oh, look, I've won again. And you get the visual of the big fire, etc. But there is no build up to Hogan using fire in the past, Steve-O.
All right. Well, then I just think it's a pointless spot. Genuinely, just a pointless
Fair
spot
enough.
for the sake of making something dramatic for the sake of it. I don't like it when that happens in wrestling. I in fact, just takes me out of my my disbelief. I can't suspend my disbelief.
Your bubble, yeah.
I can't, because it's just like, well, what's he doing it for? If there was a genuine reason, like, oh, I don't know, Ultimate Warrior had done something with fire to Hogan or whatever, but if that's not the case, I'm just thinking, meh.
Again, though, you're talking about continuity and context. And if there was history going, but they talk about it all the time on this pay-per-view in this match with regards to when they wrestled once previously. And this is, according to Tony Schiavone, the only person Hogan has never beat. He says on commentary a few times, which is bullshit, by the way. At this point in his career, he's never beaten Goldberg. So that's nonsense. But anyway, we'll skirt over that. And they talk about the previous match at WrestleMania, they don't mention the WWF WrestleMania or anything like that. Of course, they're not going to, but they throw back to that initial contest a lot. You're right, Steve-O. If there was some form of previous to this, it would have made sense. As much as I criticize the crisscross spot, their match at WrestleMania 6 had a big crisscross spot, so I can understand why it was included, as ridiculous as it may well be. This fire spot, yeah, I get you.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you. This was a spot to stroke the ego of Hulk Hogan. That was all. He's never had any supernatural powers, so there's no context for him of throwing fireballs at people before. So it made absolutely no sense. And there's so much that could have and did go wrong that it wasn't worth the risk of doing a spot like this for nothing. It all it does is it gives the Warrior an out in terms of the finish, which they got anyway, because with that spot not working, it's quite clear that the Bischoff and Horace Hogan stuff was kind of done on the fly.
Yes, it was. Yes,
and I think that as an out works better anyway than Hogan magically getting a fireball ability and throwing it into the Warrior's face. That makes a lot less sense than Hogan, Horace Hogan coming out and helping his uncle win. That is a better ending than the one that they went for.
Yeah, I mean, we that's kind of it then, I suppose. We get to the finish from this, don't we? Hogan goes for the leg drop of doom, as it is referred to as. I think he hits one, misses the second, as Horace Hogan arrives. Bischoff arrives too. Bischoff distracts the referee. Horace Hogan has a chair, nails the Warrior. We get the 3 count. That's effectively the end of the match, boys, isn't it? So, yeah, that's a bit of a, wet squib of a finish, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I thought the ending was... I may have written down here, Bischoff's got a headlock on Nick Patrick, which was just...
And again, the referee didn't call the match then.
No.
That should have been a disqualification, but it didn't call the match.
But it depends who you listen to as well. The Warrior said that this match went as it was supposed to in certain interviews before he passed away. Hogan and Bischoff have both said that the fireball spot was botched, so they called this finish on the fly. So I suppose you're on pay-per-view, you got an arena full of people, your planned finish doesn't work. To try and just bring something new and get... I can understand. The finish is shit, but at the same time, at least they tried something. I don't mind backing them on that front. At least they gave it a go to try and say, if Bischoff and Hogan are to be believed above the Warrior. I mean, these are 3 people that are quite famous for, shall we say, bending the truth a little bit. But if we're going to take the word of Bischoff and Hogan above the Warrior, then to have Horace Hogan down there, the chair shots and what they worked with Nick Patrick, the referee, I applaud them for at least trying to do something. as opposed to letting it just end with that shitty fireball that didn't really work. At least they gave it a go, maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm probably not as low on the matches as you two, but for me, the NWO get involved is not good. The big spot, the fireball, shits the bed. The finish is not the best. And for me, the biggest issue is that at this point in his career, Hogan needed a dance partner that could carry a good match, especially if you go in 10, 15 minutes like this match was. Warrior was never that guy. Warrior was never a 15-minute match guy. So putting these two together in the late 90s in a big match like this and giving them 15 minutes was always going to be bad. Always going to be bad. These two could not work together at this time for 15 minutes, and this match absolutely proved that.
You're spot on. Warrior, I suppose in a way, there's a lot of similarities between the two, especially when you look at their WWF days, because Hogan's best stuff in WWF came with the likes of Randy Savage. The Hogan Warrior match at WrestleMania 6 is much better than this, but it's not great. But Hogan's best stuff came with, I mean, he had the feud with Mr. Perfect and so on. Guys who could really, really work. And the Warriors the same. The Warriors' best matches in WWF, to me, as a fan who lived through it, 89, 90, and so on, the Warriors' best stuff was working with Rick Rude. His SummerSlam match in 89 with Rick Rude, his SummerSlam main event in the cage at 1990 SummerSlam with Rick Rude. These are the personalities that sell the tickets. These are the personalities that the kids want to see. And as a kid of that time, 100%, I was all about Hogan, all about the Warrior. I speak to my wife; she was all about the Warrior. Now, as a grown-up, we look at it and think this guy was shite. But as a kid, he got us to watch because of the big personality, the music, the color, everything about it. But it was the likes of Perfect and Rude who would carry the match. So when you get the two guys who are, shall we say, more about appearance than substance, you lose out on what makes the match good, I would argue.
Yeah. You need a ring general, and neither of these were, at this time, a ring general.
Exactly. So, Steve-O, to summarize, my friend, give us your thoughts on this match and then your standard chain wrestling rating out of 10.
Again, I'm someone that wants to know every detail as to why I should be invested in this match. And there was nothing, like, whether it's WCW's fault for not showing us a promo package as to what the match is about, and if there's any form of, within reason, some form of storytelling within the match itself, which I didn't really get, as we've already discussed. There's so many non-continuity. There's a lot of continuity errors, which I'm just like, it's just taking me out of the moment, and the whole fireball thing and everything. I'm just like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I genuinely, like, the match that you spoke of, Hogan versus Goldberg in that 70,000 capacity arena, I wanted to watch. I think I did watch the following Nitro or something. I can't remember now.
I listened to your podcast covering that episode of Nitro as well. I found it fascinating.
Oh, I did do it then, did I? Like you, I can't remember last week, but I just look at this stuff and I just think it is. I see why WCW went out of business. I know there's thousands of reasons why they went out of business, but for me, I'm just like, this is one of many. And you ask about giving a rating. I mean, I'd rather give the rating on their physiques rather than the match, because it is just. I would never ever. You say this a lot, Si. I never ever will go back to this match again. And for me, I mean, I will one day. I may even do it tomorrow. Watch Yokozuna versus The Undertaker, because I bet that match is better than this.
It is.
Well, there we are. And you gave that, what, a 3 out of 10? I did an unbooking.
How do you remember this shit?
Well, because I literally listen to you every single day, and I'm going through all in chronological order, and you have such an impact on my life. It's just stuck in my
Oh,
brain.
Oh, mate, thank you
And,
so much. That's so lovely.
I did my first ever appearance on Book in the Territory. They asked me to review a Nitro episode from 2000, I think it was, and I think I gave that. No, it was 1999, and I gave that a 3 out of 10. It was horrific.
I can imagine. Yep.
I probably, for me, got to go with probably the same score for this. 3, maybe a 2, but I'll go with 3, only because of Hulk Hogan being who he is. That's the only thing that got me invested in the match. Hulk Hogan himself, but yeah, just awful. I mean, you didn't even mention the bit at the end with like the pouring of the gas or whatever.
Oh my God, you're right. Yes.
And then all I hear is like one of the people. You'd have to tell me who this person is, but there's some bloke comes out from the back, and he's like, "You can't do that." And Bischoff is like, "I can do what I want." I
Doug
don't
Dillinger,
know.
yeah, that's right.
Yes, and yeah,
he was head of security for WCW. Yeah.
Oh right, okay, and he's just Eric Bischoff's like, I can do whatever I want, and I'm just thinking this is just ridiculous. Like you've completely taken me out of this now, and I don't. It's a bit like my tangent about the whole Austin and what's his name with the gun, the guy. But yeah, I just like this is just ridiculous. I hate it. But yeah, 3 out of 10. That's being generous.
Magsy, your summary and your score, my friend.
I mean, I totally get a lot of Steve O's points, and they absolutely make sense. For me, I knew of Hogan and the Warrior before this, so this could have or should have at the time been a huge match. It should have been massive. This was something that had only ever happened at WrestleMania. The rematch 8 years down the line in a totally different company should have been huge. But these two can't wrestle for toffee. The spots didn't work. So for me, the only interesting part is the throwbacks to the match that I enjoyed as a kid. But as an adult, I didn't enjoy them because I'm a totally different wrestling fan. So I agree with a hell of a lot of Steve O's points. This was not a good match, not a good finish, not a good big spot. Too much NWO getting involved. The rules not applying as and when the ref and the bookers see fit. But it's not the worst thing I've ever watched.
Wow. Christ.
But I'm going to go with the same score as Steve O. I think a 3 is generous, but I'm going to go with a 3.
Okay, fair enough. I'm a touch lower. I have a 2.
Really? I mean, there's not much lower you can get than a 3. It's like play your cards right.
I was about to say,
a 3. It's a 2.
Brucey bonus over there. It's. I think the best part of this match was the entrances.
Yes. Yeah.
I think the Warriors entrance was awesome for me because it reminded me of being 8, 9, 10 years old.
And then
Hogan's entrance is badass. Hogan NWO is so cool. And Steve-O, I can't wait for you to start seeing some of this NWO stuff. It is the fact that people now still talk about it, and the fact that the NWO shirt is still one of the highest selling T-shirts in wrestling in various guises says a lot, because this is, television from 28 years ago?
Yeah.
1996, whatever it may all be. It says a lot. So the entrances are fantastic. Bell to bell, this is fucking terrible. And I don't, Steve-O, you put forward my line very, very well. I don't ever want to go back and watch this again. And it's a shame, because I think WCW 96, 97, 98, there is so much good, but we remember the bad because the characters are so big and strong. Warrior, Hogan, they're so standout as individuals and characters and names in the wrestling business. This gets remembered above a mid-card match that had nothing on it, that was potentially, a 4-star blinder. We don't remember that because there's no storyline to it. We remember this because of all the build-up, the hype, the nonsense with the mirror, the trapdoor that crippled Davey Boy Smith, all that crap. But it's just, no, it's not for me. It's not for me. The Warrior, a little bit of context for those who are interested. The Warrior wasn't long for WCW after this. He appeared on a couple more Nitros. I think he sadly, very, very sadly, saved Brutus Beefcake from an NWO beatdown at one point. And that was his last appearance for WCW. He disappeared from wrestling then. We know how the Warrior then went on in his life to do certain newspaper columns and live YouTubes and interviews and podcasts. And he would come across incredibly homophobic and racist at times. And he was not a particularly pleasant character for a long period of his life. However, credit where it's due, towards the end of his days, he did realize that his behavior in the past was not acceptable. He was not a nice person. And the Warrior's last match was actually against openly gay performer Orlando Jordan for a wrestling promotion that was promoting equality and the acceptance of everyone. And the Warrior put Orlando Jordan over in the main event of that show and apologized for his previous homophobic comments or attitude. And we all know, of course, the Warrior then went into the WWE Hall of Fame, appeared on Raw the following night, and then, incredibly, considering the promo that he cut on Raw about every man taking his last breath, passed away. I'm not going to lie, my wife and I, we shed a tear because this was a big part of our childhood.
Yeah.
And as bad as the Warrior could be, bell to bell, there was just something about this guy. If you could bottle what he had in 89, if you could bottle what he had in 90, and literally drip feed it to some guys who wrestle now with their in-ring ability, oh my goodness, you'd have a money-making machine, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But there we go. There we go. And obviously, of course, the Warrior has led to the Warrior Award with the WWE Hall of Fame, which is highlighting some fantastic people there as well. But yes, we all agree this was pretty wank. So, so then, gentlemen, next week, and this is interesting because we have a 3-way poll because everyone on the show is going to put forward an option. Where do we go next week? Magsy, normally we start with you. Should we do that or should we jump to our guest?
No, do you know? I will let Steve-O take the wheel.
You're a prick. You know that. 99 episodes, right?
Yeah, but 99... I like Steve-O.
No, fuck you. 99 fucking episodes. I've never been allowed to go first. I say, what do you want to do? And I'll go first. Yeah, well,
that was your doing from episode 1.
Okay.
Do you want to go first?
No, I fucking don't.
Well, there we go. You could go first next episode.
Bollocks. I don't believe you. Steve-O, where do we go next week? Where are you linking? What is the option?
So I'm going to do a Mags. I'm cheating.
I bet you don't bend the rules.
Watch this again. He's linking back to this match.
I don't want to hear next week's chain wrestling to do with Hogan or the Warrior. I'm doing this from a selfish point of view.
Okay.
So the following match was DDP versus Goldberg.
Mm-hmm.
And again, from a selfish point of view, I only know Goldberg in WWE. And the best thing I saw what he did was when he came back after 18 years and took on Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series. That is up there with one of the biggest shocks for me in the time that I've kind of watched new wrestling, even though it was in 2016, which
That's new to me. Steve-O, that's new to me. My wife gets her hair off with me because I say, I'm talking about modern wrestling this week. And she's like, oh, right. And I say, yeah, it was from 1999. And she's like, that's not fucking modern. That's... No. But please, sorry, mate, carry on.
No, and that's literally it. I'm linking the following matches, wrestlers, which was Goldberg, and essentially it's him taking on Brock Lesnar at that Survivor Series and winning that match after 2 minutes. I thought that was absolutely phenomenal.
Smash and grab. Goldberg
Because
looked great.
because Goldberg back then was this monster of a man. I mean, he was a unit. It's incredible. And he was just decimating people left, right, and centre. And then he comes back after that amount of time to Survivor Series and do what he did to Brock Lesnar. And I'm a massive Brock Lesnar mark. Not quite now, but certainly back then. Oh, I was in love with him. And going back to that Survivor Series. I can't believe that was in 2016, though. I'm sure that was later. I'm sure it may have been a bit later, maybe 2018.
Because he's going to dive on the old Googles and have a look.
Go on the old Google. I'm pretty certain that Lesnar fought Goldberg at the Survivor Series in 2018, possibly. Because I know it was an era where I kind of fallen out of love with wrestling by that point. Because ironically, in NXT, it was coming to a dire end.
It was Survivor Series 2016. Yeah.
Wow.
Do you know what's ironic, Steve-O? Really, and hopefully you will watch along a bit with us when we get to that point with Nitro Nights. That version of Goldberg is Goldberg. Yeah. That's WCW Goldberg. That's the Goldberg that went 174 matches unbeaten. Yeah. And the company was built around him. So that's a great shout, my friend.
And the irony is that just describing it and putting forward that pick, you actually took longer than Goldberg took to win that match.
Magsy, where do you want to go next week?
Okay, so last week I used the link of Jericho, and I'm actually going to backtrack on that. I'm going to use the link of Jericho again. But there's a reason behind it. I wanted to tie in the whole 100 episodes thing. So
okay,
I actually looked back to find the 100th ever WWF pay-per-view. And that pay-per-view is something that we've kind of touched on. It's been mentioned in the chat, but we've mentioned kind of like the aftermath of it. It's the 2000 Royal Rumble. It's actually the 100th.
Oh wow! Here we go.
Chris Jericho is on that. It's the match where he and China are dual champions.
Terrible.
Both. But I don't want to watch that bullshit. Let's watch the 2000 Royal Rumble where The Rock eliminates Big Show and the whole controversial ending there. So for the 100th episode, let's go to the 100th ever WWF pay-per-view and watch the 2000 Royal Rumble.
If that wins, I'm going to selfishly say, can I come on and cover that as well? Because that is my era. Mm-hmm. That is my era. I love it. 2000.
Well, no, you can't for that. For putting forward Goldberg versus Brock, you are barred from the show. No, of course you can. Absolutely, of course you
can. My link is similar to Steve-O's in a way.
Oh, we're all cheating.
No cheating at all. I'm going to use a step of your link, but not go quite as far as you. You used Goldberg as the link. He was in the match that followed on. And followed on from this, at Halloween Havoc. Incidentally, Steve, I don't know if you're aware, but the match with Hogan Warrior ran a bit long. The pay-per-view ran a bit long, and they only had 3 hours of pay-per-view time. So the main event of Halloween Havoc, believe it or not, it was not Hogan Warrior, as much as WWE tried to push it as that. Goldberg defended the title against Diamond Dallas Page in the match after this. Because it went close to 3.5 hours, that match didn't air in so many markets in the States because the pay-per-view feed cut.
And they had to it cut on just after the entrances, didn't it?
Yes. And they had to re-show that match for $3 on Nitro, and it cost WCW millions of dollars.
Wow. In refunds,
Yeah. How much of a shambles is that? So I would like to do that. I would like to go and stick with this pay-per-view, stick with WCW, stick with Halloween Havoc 1998. I would like to watch Goldberg versus Diamond Dallas Page from the main event of Halloween Havoc 98. And I'll tell you why.
I watched it.
You've never seen it. Because you've
No.
never seen it.
I have seen it. This match was given by Wade Keller and by our good friend Dave Meltzer as the best match Halloween Havoc has ever seen. Now, you put into
Jesus.
context how many matches Halloween Havoc has had. You know, that's quite a big statement. It's also apparently one of the best matches Goldberg has ever had. And the whole story was built around the Diamond Cutter. Or the RKO as we now know it. Diamond Dallas Page would hit the Diamond Cutter, the match would be over. So everyone favored Goldberg because he was smashing the shit out of everybody. He was like on 150 odd unbeaten at this point. But everyone thought the underdog, Page, if he hits that Diamond Cutter, we could see a title change. And I've rewatched it recently. It's pretty fucking good. It's a good babyface versus babyface match. There's some interesting storytelling in there. So that is my option.
So ironically, me and you are both using the following match to next week. That's mad.
Great minds
In fact, you're
think alike.
literally using the following match for next week.
Exactly.
That's the amount of effort he puts in every single week.
Why do you keep saying this? Why do you keep digging me about the amount of effort I put? I work fucking hard, mate. I'll tell you that. So those are your options for next week. The poll will be up later in the week on the Chain Wrestling Twitter account at @chain_wrestling. We have Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar from Survivor Series 2016. And a real throwback to what made Goldberg great in the first place. We have the Royal Rumble from 2000. And we also have Diamond Dallas Page versus Goldberg for the WCW World title for the main event of Halloween Havoc 1998. Make sure you vote, retweet, and all that great stuff when the poll comes up later on in the week. Magsy, I feel we've not done the chat enough credit this week or enough attention. Should we dive on in, have a look what people have been saying before we depart this evening?
Yes, absolutely. So we'll go back to where Josh says the bell ringer was often a problem for Warrior. Absolutely. Looking back on his matches now as an adult, it was not good.
It makes you appreciate Rick Rude even more, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And then it was said about WCW, you couldn't make Top Guy money unless you were on top, and you couldn't be on top unless you made Top Guy money, which stifled any scope for upward mobility. Yeah, I remember I think it was Eddie Guerrero who was forever complaining on his way to the ring that he was sick of being in this position, and I think Jericho did it as well. Dan Griffin says this is what he watches Chain Wrestling for: logical, reasoned, well thought out debate, and then Mag saying, "Well, fuck you." Exactly. I'm also being called the little car park dogger, which is fun.
It's not about shagging; it's about the fighting.
Dan Griffin thinks that Steve O's JR impression sounded more like Jim Cornette. Oh my goodness.
What the hell was that?
that was if Booker T had a straw.
You sounded like the woman of Coronation Street.
Where's Mavis, you know?
Josh again saying, imagine if the Court Warrior and with the fire and the grease paint had gone up in flame. I think that was probably the plan. That was probably Hogan. You beat me at WrestleMania, you bastard. I'll scar you for laugh.
Worse than that, look how feathered and how big that 1980s hair is. What if it had caught the hairspray the Warrior had been using?
Yeah, exactly. Very dangerous. It was just ill thought out by Hogan. Just pathetic. Dan says 15 minutes of a match. It was about 12 minutes, 59 seconds too long. The sad thing is, he's right. It was so much too long. Doug Dillinger, the only man who loves the camera more than Jimmy Hart. And then Sharon says, "Oh, Steve, it's nice that someone listens to Sal when he talks." And that's why he has to resort to guest spots to get someone in who pays attention to him. Dan Griffin confirming that it was Goldberg return in October 2016. Jesus Christ, so it's been 6 years ago since Goldberg came back.
Crazy.
That's
crazy.
Madness. Absolute madness. He also says the Raw versus SmackDown 5-on-5 Elimination Chamber match from that pay-per-view took 53 minutes. That's a long.
All for bragging rights.
Yeah, exactly. And then the Dan Griffin says the 2000 Royal Rumble, which is forever known as the Takamichi Noku Boink Royal Rumble. That guy bumped his arse off literally for that.
There was a. Oh, I think it was one of your chain wrestlings. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was like, I can't remember what it was, but all I remember is me saying that there's a quote that I use from JR in that particular Royal Rumble. Another one that crops up a lot is when Jerry the King Lawler's just like, can we watch that spot again with Michinoku and JR just goes, would you stop that? He's Japanese, not Chinese. Well, the same country, aren't they? You know? Please vote that Royal Rumble, please.
Casual racism at its finest.
There we go. So then that concludes this week's Chain Wrestling Live this year's Halloween special. Thank you so much to everyone in the CWF who has got involved with our non-wrestling topic, got involved with our Halloween competition, got involved in the chat. It's been fantastic. Steve-O, thank you so much for joining us this week. I have had a blast. It's been awesome actually talking to you, not in person because we're in completely different parts of the country, but as close as it can possibly be. It has been fantastic. And I want to say personally, hand on heart, my friend, thank you so much for all the support that you give Chain Wrestling. Thank you so much for all the support that you give any other shows that I'm involved with, Magsy's involved with, UTT and Bang Bang. You're a pillar of our community, my friend. And the CWF, they named themselves the CWF, and it is literally that. It's the Chain Wrestling family. But I think the CWF revolves around you. I think you're one of the most important components of this little niche group we have. He's own corner.
Pervy uncle.
He's I think it revolves a great deal around yourself, you know, and I want to thank you so much for everything you do. All the great content you put out yourself. I love your shows on music. I love your shows. The episode watching back of Nitro, I loved it so much. I listened twice. It's brilliant. And just knowing you as a friend and knowing you as someone who supports what we do, honestly, hand on heart, my friend, it means so much. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Steve-O. I've had a blast.
No, thank you. It's, like I say, it's very humbling you saying that, because like I said, this show is literally a part of my life. I literally listen every single day, and it's very, very. I keep saying this on Elite FPL, that with Elite FPL we're very much a community, and in your guys' world, we're a family. And I find with the independent shows like you guys are and we are, they're more personal. And the reason why I am the way I am is because I've got a connection with what you guys are talking about. And I find that with Elite FPL, for example, me and Jason have this connection with our audience. And I think that what you guys have got is something really special. And there are people in this family that, you know, honestly, like, you guys are literally part of my life every single day. And it's almost like a routine of mine to make sure that every Thursday I'm listening to you guys on the way to London Zoo, as an example. And, you know, even like all my little side projects that I do with the podcasting and stuff, it's all a learning curve for me. And, you know, I'm still even doing this 2011 podcast stuff that I'm doing. I'm not going to deny it. The first couple of episodes are fucking awful. However, they get better, because I'm trying to improve myself. I do my own research into my own show, like where I got to do the sound levels and everything and all this nonsense. And it is down to you guys that why I do it. And there's a lot of things that Mag says, like I said at the start of the show, like, if you enjoy what you're doing, just do it. And for me personally, like, I never expected to be doing every single episode of Raw, SmackDown for 2011, but I'm just enjoying it now. It's just part of the process. And I'm not going to, well, no, can I reveal it now? Yeah, I will, to hell with it. I've been in contact with Rob and Dan for the three of us to cover WrestleMania 27, and I kind of want to each pay-per-view of 2011, I kind of want to get you guys on, and then various other people of the Chain Wrestling family to come on and just talk about the pay-per-view that I'll be coming up to and stuff, and then releasing it and everything. Because, like I say, I want to cover it all. I just think it's just something people may find interesting, and whatever my point of views are. Don't get me wrong, a lot of it is just I found this segment awful. I find it very difficult just to do this stuff on my own, because I need that two-way conversation with somebody. Doing these things on my own, it's impossible. I have to do it on my own because I'm so busy with Elite FPL that arranging to do this is very, very rare. I'm coming up on Bang Bang podcast, and it's taken us months to arrange an actual date, because I can't specifically say I can do this date, because I'm just so busy with Elite FPL and work that I'd love to do guest spots and everything. I've been invited on many times to different podcasts. I'm like, I can't do it. I'm afraid I can't do it. But going back to this whole Chain Wrestling family, I think it's just wonderful what you've done, and like especially with your media group and everything, and a lot of the shows I listen to, like your and Sharon's podcast is, I don't know where they've gone. You've done 2 episodes. I think they're brilliant. I think they're wonderful.
It's funny. Me and Sharon spoke about it literally the other day about when we're going to get more recorded, but she's very busy with her business, and she's also been decorating our front room, and it looks fucking fantastic, to my love. It looks amazing. But also I'm very busy with this, but it is something that we're going to do, and we're going to return to, and I can't wait, because I love recording with my wife. It's fantastic. It's funny because I speak to my wife every day, but we sit down and have a recording. It feels different, and it's lush,
Yeah, your NXT Rise and Fall with Josh is just stunning. And that's just the intro. The actual conversation pieces are just magnificent. Like, I'll just literally just be in the graveyard, just sat there, just listening and listening and listening. And like, I always say this, what a good podcast is when you forget what you're doing and time just disappears. It's the same with the change in attitude. I don't know what's happened with it, but whatever's happened with it. And I really, really enjoyed that. And like I say, this show is just, like I say, it's just part of my life. I'm just repeating myself now, but I just think it's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's really touched me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I can only echo everything that Sar said. It always blows my mind when I hear that people have listened to my content. It's only ever been, I don't want to say vanity projects, but they've been to entertain me. And to have the conversations. It's never been about numbers or views or monetization. It's always been about having conversations with other wrestling fans. And the fact that you and the rest of the amazing CWF come back every week to listen to what 2 morons say about the world of wrestling, it always blows my mind, and I will never not appreciate that from you guys. You not even just listening to the show, the support that I get in my daily life from knowing that guys like you, guys like Dan, guys like Danesh, Sharon, give a shit about what I think, or listen to the words that say. It means more than I could ever tell anyone, and it's just it's a very, very warm feeling, and we massively appreciate you taking the time to come on this show. It's been amazing, absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for doing it.
But it's like with any podcast, I know we're going on a bit now, but it's like with any podcast though that I listen to, if you're talking about subject matters which are relatable, it's a bit like with wrestling. If you can relate with it, you'll be invested in it. And the way you structured this specific show, which is just non-wrestling topic, where let's get real here, everybody's got something to say about whatever the subject matter is, apart from me today. But the point being is that everybody has a story about something, and we can have a laugh about it. And then ironically, I reckon today's wrestling segment is probably the longest segment you've done, because most of the wrestling segments you do run for about 30 minutes, 35 minutes. Today it's been almost an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half. And it's just fantastic because you two are so knowledgeable of about the wrestling itself. People like me are just like, give me more, give me more, give me more. It's like the same with Rob and Dan. Those two are encyclopedias. It is ridiculous, and the fact that your characters as well, it's why I kind of started listening to Mags, because you did an episode with James and Rob doing the 1992 Royal Rumble.
Okay.
And I was like, who are these guys? Like, they've got northern voices, and like I was just grabbed straight away. But it's the knowledge that you were giving me as a listener. I was like, I'm going to give these guys more of a go, or give them a go, and it's just brilliant. It's why I support you with the shirts and stuff. I mean, I've bought what 4 or 5 of your shirts, and I want to buy the NXT one, because I just think it's brilliant. And yeah, it's the way that I and various other people can show support towards you by just wearing your merchandise, because it's just brilliant. My favorite one is the is it the Outsiders, the NWO style one, the red one. That's my favorite one. I think that's awesome. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
My favorite is I Know Words -Mags. That's the best one.
With regards to the merch, it's a huge thing for me, because a little bit of, I suppose, peek behind the curtain. This does cost money. The StreamYard costs money. The subscriptions to the site I use to design the merchandise cost money. The site that carries the podcasts, obviously this is the live one, this costs money. There's another site that carries our audio stuff that costs money. The way that is funded is by people buying the merch. So to me personally, that means a great deal. So yeah, again, Steve, I can't thank you enough for all the support you've given us. It's fantastic, my friend.
No, like without wanting to repeat myself, like at the end of the day, like it's people like you guys, whether you're Mags and Sai or you're Joe Rogan, like if you're keeping your audience entertained by distracting them away from their, like in my place of work, some shitty fucking job as a team leader in a supermarket, for that 3 hours between 4:30 in the morning and 7:30 in the morning, and I've got you guys in my ears for 2.5 hours or whatever the time is, just goes, because I'm enjoying what you're doing, and it's just go on to the next episode or whatever, and it's just brilliant.
I think that's the best compliment that you could ever pay us, that we take you out of your mundane real life and whisk you away. No, and I'm not disparaging your life at all, but we take you out of reality, and we wish you away on a journey with us idiots. That honestly means the world to us, and
it does.
We
honestly,
massively appreciate it.
I've literally just WhatsApped to the wife as we were talking, saying we need to wrap up soon because I'm getting emotional. I don't want to cry on air. Fucking hell, I've got a reputation to upkeep.
We should definitely just do a Halloween Havoc 1998 outro and just cut off whilst we're still talking and just cut the show.
Maybe the audio version later in the week that'll happen as a bit of a wind up. I don't know. It won't, because I'll forget. But there we go. Steve-O, before we depart, my friend, do you want to let everyone know whereabouts they can find you online and all the fantastic content you do, your solo podcasts, your fantasy football? It's awesome.
Really, it's the fantasy football stuff I like to promote, really, which is at Elite FPL. I'm really proud of what me and Jason have done over the past 4 years. It's gone from literally what you guys are doing now, but it was on a Facebook group, to what it is now, where we're literally streaming to like 130 odd people or whatever it is. It's just ridiculous. Like Mags's words, I can't believe people listen to what me and Jason have to say. But anyhow, that's at Elite FPL. So if you like fantasy football, all my other stuff is just me, just being me. If you like,
it's always worth listening to, my friend. It's always worth listening to.
Thank you. And
that's the best thing that you could have said, because that's what draws people into you. I mean, I think I've said it on this show multiple times. I'm not the heavy rock fan that you and Sai are, but I would happily listen to you reviewing songs, because I'm drawn into you and your character and your mindset. And I love seeing you air guitaring, and I love seeing you like the drums and the earphone way is just going mental in the air. I just you are so
it's gold.
So easy to like. It's just it's just so much fun.
It's not being pretentious, and it's something that I get fucked off with a lot of content, whether it's the fitness world, whether it's the wrestling world, or whatever. I can't stand pretentious people, and this is real. These are just two blokes, three blokes in this case, chatting about something that they love. And like with my music videos, which are literally just me, like you just said, air guitaring along. It's like I'm not going to stand here for 10 minutes talking about the music because I'm not really knowledgeable enough to talk about it. It's just like I'm just going to show you that I enjoy it. Here's the song, press play, bang, here we go, let's play around. But yeah, I did a video yesterday for a laugh, but everything that I do is at Total Stevo, and the TikTok one's the weird one. That what's her face? Nicole Bass is now at 17 million views. It's just like
that's insane.
Madness.
It is. It's ridiculous.
More people paying attention to Nicole Bass on your TikTok than their actual career.
Well, TikTok's a crazy one because, like, essentially, like, I'm now just uploading dash cam video footage of car crashes, and like some videos get like, a few thousand views, some get just a few hundred, and then there was one the other day that got like 170,000 views. It's just like insane. It's crazy. I just literally just post and ghost on these fucking things. The only thing that I do like doing is interact on Twitter. I think Twitter, because of Twitter, is how I got to connect with you guys, and I think Twitter is a really powerful platform. I know a lot of people criticize it, but I actually think personally Twitter is probably the best social media site out there. That's my opinion. And
even when they ban your accounts multiple times.
Yeah, my fault.
I like Instagram because of all the pretty ladies.
God, I'm too cynical. Just listen to my podcast. I'm too cynical.
I have heard it. Magsy, my friend, is it worth anyone following you, or are you still ghosting everyone, being a dick?
I mean, you can follow. That's rude. First of all, being called a dick. But I do have these social medias that Steve has. My TikTok is not as active as Steve-O's, but you can follow me at MagsAllPods, or follow me down here on the Twitter. I've liked and retweeted this week, so fuck you, sir, at Podfather Mags.
Fantastic. With regards to me, nobody wants to follow me. That's not interesting. You need to be following the network. Of the show. Yeah, you need to be following the network, and that is at SJP World Media on Facebook and Twitter. On Facebook, there is a page and a group. Like the page, there is an invite to the group as well. It's a private group because that's where this goes out on Facebook. So we, like to make sure that we don't get no assholes. End of. But yeah, join in, like on Twitter, follow us on Twitter, like on Facebook and so on. And via those links at SJP World Media, you get links to all the shows and all the merch. So NXT, Rise and Fall with Joshua Goodwin that Steve-O mentioned, people looking at modern day WWE, so we don't have to, with RSH in the States and in the corner with Benny Mac. Fantastic work by Benny Mac, by the way. Twice a week, he's looking at WWE for us.
Oh, he's brilliant.
Raw and SmackDown reviews. And he has the awesome Tyler Peters joining him now as a regular host on a Wednesday. Absolutely fantastic. Love Tyler. Speaking of Tyler, he does a show with Scottish Danny called Back When, which is now, it was once a month, is now in the new schedule, which has recently come out this week, going to go once a fortnight. So you'll be checking out more from Scottish Danny and Tyler Peters there when they look at Back When, numerous stuff, back when certain albums came out, back when certain films came out, back when certain wrestling events happened. Fantastic stuff. Those two guys I love to bits. We have Doctor Who Pod with Dan Griffin. We have The Waiting Room looking at Quantum Leap with Benny McCormack. And we have all sorts going on. Just so much going on. And more shows coming all the time. This week on its own, Thursday, a new show added. Murder in Mind podcast with our good friend Morty from Morty and Fitch podcast. Me and he are looking back at a sometimes forgotten BBC drama from the early 2000s called Murder in Mind. Just so much content there. Make sure you chuck it a follow. But most importantly, you can follow this show on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at @chain_wrestling. That's at @chain_wrestling. And on Twitter is where all your non-wrestling topics and your competitions and the poll and so on are available. Gentlemen, I have had an absolute blast. I have loved this. Steve-O, thank you so much for joining us. It has been fantastic. Magsy, as always, I love you to bits, even if you do look ridiculous. And I want to say I'm off now to listen back to our first 2 or 3 episodes of Chain Wrestling, because Chain Wrestling 100 comes out next week. And it's only really Steve-O that remembers those early jokes. So I'm going to try and recycle them. I'll speak to you next week, boys.
Bye-bye.